Chapter 299, Long Time No See. Chapter 299, Long Time No See. In the southwest corner of the Sun Island, there was a quiet manor which was specially made of pink bricks. This manor originally belonged to a great elder who had encountered the cultivation insanity and carelessly let his soul and spirit perish. Therefore, this place had become ownerless. The manor was 30 mu. There was a small lake with a bonsai in the yard, as well as 10 different kinds of storied houses. The maid who was living there year-round had been cleaning it up so carefully that this place was immune from dust. In the three-god sect, places that were used to host visitors would be arranged in accordance with their status and classified into different levels. This manor was one of the three-god sect's best accommodations for their guests. Only the leaders of powerful forces were welcomed and stayed here. Ordinary elderly protectors weren't qualified enough to be able to stay here. As Shiryen and the other 3 leaders of Mo, Kaba, and Yimeng arrived at this place, they were engrossed in looking at the wooden pillars with full of decorative carvings on the side, the delicate furnishings and implements, as well as the abundant and diversified setup. They kept quietly giving compliments and were astonished by the luxuriousness of the three-god sect. The servants were all good-looking. The beautiful maids here were around 14 or 15 years old, wearing light clothes exposing their arms and bellies with healthily tanned skins. They were approaching Shiryen and his fellows, holding the silver plates loaded with shining fresh fruits, and then respectfully lifted up and offered to them. As soon as Shiryen sat down in a spacious living room, 7 girls, who were still very young in age and very pretty, were all busy running back and forth, bringing them refreshments. This place is one of the noblest places to host guests of the three-god sect. Last time, when my uncle and I came to this island, we weren't qualified enough to stay here. That is the time when the three-god sect is receiving many distinguished guests, so I have thought that the treat this time would even have been worse than last time. Unexpectedly, that Guy Li Fu has brought us straight to this place. It is unbelievable indeed. Chao Jilan was sitting opposite of Shiryen. Her jade-like hand picked up a succulent grape, cocked her head, peeling the fruit. She didn't look at him but mumbled with a low voice. Li Fu should definitely have regards for your Chao family. Shiryen neglectfully bit a sparkling grape in his hand and said, "Haven't you said that the Chao family's power is ranked in the top 3 of the Endless Sea?" "I haven't just been self-conceited." Chao Jilan nodded. Her full red lips chewed the grape and swallowed it. She then smiled and raised her head up. Her beautiful eyes contained some meaningful implications. The headmaster of the Chao family comes, it is obvious that he should be received here. However, your status and my status are deficient, so it is impossible to be qualified enough to stay here. Li Fu has seemed to pay attention to me on the way here, but he has fixed his eyes on someone else. The bright and clear eyes of the beautiful woman looked at Shiryen attentively while revealing a big, charming smile. "I am just curious. He has never asked your identity, but has treated you even more carefully and attentively than when treating a Sky Realm master. He hasn't even dared to look straight into your eyes. Instead, he has just stayed behind and sneakily looked at you. Why does he have to be so respectful?" Shiryen shrugged, pointed toward Mo, Yimeng, Kaba, and said, "Perhaps he has recognized their real realm levels." The beautiful woman smiled and shook her head. When the God Realm warriors intentionally want to hide their auras, as long as they don't use their God Realm power, no one can realize it, including the warriors at the same realm. So, how could he have recognized it? Especially, our 3 men have profound understandings of the spiritual Upanishads. When they hide their identities on purpose, even the warriors at the higher levels couldn't realize their real cultivation base. Shiryen was surprised, shook his head with a forced smile but didn't explain more. Chao Jilan angrily glared at him as he didn't answer her. She suddenly stood up and said, "I am going to the sacred light mountain. Do you want to go with me?" Shiryen shook his head. The Sun Island is round, hence, the guest houses are all on the edge of the island. However, the foot of the sacred light mountain is the most interesting place of the island. There are the most famous sacred light hot spring and storied houses for exchanging cultivating materials, secret treasures, as well as the adjacent area's specialties, as Shi Yan didn't seem to be stirred up. Chao Zhilan felt discouraged and then told him in detail some interesting things of that place. Shi Yan still shook his head with a faint smile, swung his arm and urged, "You go first. I might feel interested later and will find you there. You should remember that we have placed the formation technique inside your body. Before the Chao family pays us the ransom, you shouldn't do anything stupid. Don't have to warn me always." "Okay." Chao Zhilan was resentful. "I am afraid that when you are accustomed to the familiar environment there, you will forget that binding." "Ha ha ha, I don't have any other intentions. You can go now." Chao Zhilan glanced at him. Her prominent body like a beautiful purple-blossomed flower deliberately glided away, dragging the colliding sounds of the crystal adornments on the flap of her dress. As soon as Chao Zhilan had left, Shi Yan's face became somber. He suddenly stood up from the chair. Without caring about the surprise of the other 3 people of Tianmo's group, he sat down straight on the floor, instantly released his soul consciousness to observe something in silence. The other 3 people were bewildered a little bit before condensing a proper defensive formation in the room to prevent strangers from penetrating. Many flows of miraculous soul vibrations spread out from Shi Yan's body. These flows were very peculiar, bringing different kinds of feelings which contained tiny consciousnesses. The 3 people of Tianmo's group were all great masters of souls. After having observed for a while, they realized that Shi Yan's flows of soul consciousness seemed to be receiving and also responding to some information. It was peculiar. 5 minutes later, Shi Yan slowly opened his eyes. He quietly stood up with a confused face. He contemplated for a while before speaking, "Follow me to a place." "Yes." The 3 people of Tianmo's group nodded simultaneously without saying anything further. "I don't know why it is that when I came here, I have sensed that there are 2 fellows who kept calling me." Shi Yan knitted his eyebrows tightly and thought very carefully before saying, "Those 2 fellows seem just to gain the spirit intelligence recently. Their spirits are still very innocent. Their souls seem to lack different kinds of feelings of the high-class lives. Although they are simple lives, they keep producing close affections with me. It is hard to understand." The 3 people of Tianmo's group glanced at him with a dazed look and seemed not to understand his feelings either. "It seems that I have known them and met them from somewhere, but I can't remember, even though I have tried to think a lot." Shi Yan shook his head with knitted eyebrows and a doleful face. "The feeling is peculiar and abnormal. Maybe we should go there to see, otherwise we wouldn't get anything if we just relied on our senses." The 3 people of Tianmo's group nodded again. Following Shi Yan's orders, the 3 of them retrieved their defensive formation, instructed the butler to look after the manor. Then, the 4 of them left the manor, going towards the west of the island. Shriek, shriek. Shriek, shriek. The Yin aura was very dense inside the stone chamber. The 2 wooden coffins were making creepy sounds. The sky corpses seemed to use their long, sharp nails to scratch on the coffin lids as if they wanted to lift up the lids and get out of the coffins. Yin Hai was presently not here. He had been summoned by the hierarch of the corpses god sect together with other great elders to receive the hierarch's assignments. The Yin aura and dead aura were hovering around inside the chamber. It was the dark, cold cellar, which was 10 meters underneath the ground. The light was dim and gloomy. Currently, there was only one disciple of Yin Hai in this place, who was dozing, leaning against the wooden bed in the distance, and was dreamingly wandering in the cloudy sky. The echoes from the coffins were getting louder and louder. The sounds then got too loud that he was unable to sleep deeply. He finally woke up. This young man's face changed in fear. He stared at the 2 coffins for 5 seconds before his face turned pale and hurriedly ran away to find Yin Hai supposedly. Crack, crack. A long, sharp white nail suddenly jutted out of the coffin, and then the coffin lid was broken and thrown away. The male sky corpse who had been dominated in the burial plot number 93 slowly sat up. Inside of the 2 empty sockets flared up many peculiar light dots. With a closer look, those light dots resembled the life seals of Shi Yan's life and death seal indeed. Those tiny sparkling life seals were getting clearer. A kind of indescribable forces seemed to be born. A miracle was happening. Crack, crack. A female sky corpse in the other coffin also sat up. Deep inside of the empty eyes flared up strange lights as well. Its white, pale skin glowed shiningly. Its body seemed to have gained its vitality again. Luxuriant brushes and plants were dispersive everywhere in the Sun Island. There were uncluttered big bluestone paved roads on the island. Many warriors from different seas gathered into groups of 3 or 5, wandering around. Most of them were heading towards the sacred light mountain, whisperingly talking and laughing. Shiryen knitted his eyebrows. Under the burning sunlight, his body was still frigid. He had unintentionally absorbed a part of the icy power of the ice-cold flame, which was now running all over his body. On the scorching island, his entire body was as chilled as ice, quite similar to several dangerous disciples of the corpse's god sect, which gave other people the feeling that he was too unfriendly and gloomy to get acquainted easily. As for the 3 people of Tianmo's group, they had cultivated the Yin techniques, together with their different body structures compared to the humankind's as well as their pale faces. Their bodies naturally emitted the cold and gloomy aura already. Therefore, the burning heat was automatically pushed away from their bodies while they were on their way. Even the blazing sunlight seemed impossible to shine on their bodies. Many warriors traveling on the same way suddenly trembled, feeling freezing inside when they approached more than 10 meters close to them. Those warriors instinctively stayed far away from them quickly, with fear and hatred appearing on their faces. They assumed that the 4 of them were the high-class principals of the corpse's god sect. In the Endless Sea, only the disciples of the corpse's god sect cultivated that secret icy technique. Even in the summer, their bodies were all frigid, and they wore thick tunics with the appearance that seemed to tell the others not to get any closer. The corpse's god sect was not the strongest force in the Endless Sea, but the most mystical force that frightened many warriors. If it was not necessary, ordinary warriors never wanted to contact with the disciples of the corpse's god sect. It was the instinctual resistance. Everyone was subconsciously scared of the corpse's god sect, afraid that they would have been condensed and refined into a corpse. 2 ambiguous flows of soul approached towards Shiryen, quietly went into his sea of consciousness, then floated around inside, but weren't welcomed by his host's soul. These 2 flows of soul targeted only at Shiryen himself without any wicked intentions nor attacking forces, only the joy and excitement. As these hidden 2 souls were initially ambiguous and targeted at Shiryen only, the 3 people of Tianmo's group could vaguely sense them a little bit just because they were standing next to him. The others would be unable to realize them. Shiryen used his host's soul to control and sense the 2 flows which were moving inside his sea of consciousness. He wanted to know the opponent's identity through these 2 souls. However, these 2 souls were too ambiguous, which meant that the ones who had sent them out didn't know how to use their soul forces nor enhance the soul consciousness. Although Shiryen had concentrated a lot to sense, he couldn't get any information just yet. The 5 devils in the Sea of Consciousness seemed to be very excited with these 2 souls. They were like evil monsters that wanted to pull and swallow the 2 souls, but got intimidated and was prevented by his Sea of Consciousness, and thus, they didn't succeed. Who are they after all? Shiryen felt suspicious with his knitted eyebrows. However, no matter how hard he thought, he still couldn't figure out. He suddenly ceased his steps. Shiryen retrieved the suspicious thoughts in his mind, raised his head up looking ahead. His eyes slightly squinted, the corner of his mouth lightly formed an indifferent curve. Ahead of him was a group of males and females talking and laughing, walking towards him. They seemed to be in a very good mood. A flirty woman among them wore a thin red silk dress. The snow-white area beneath the thin silk was dazzling. That woman wore a charming, smiling face. Her face was as pretty as cherry blossoms, her cheeks reddened, and her sparkling eyes were lustful as if she was very satisfied after passionate lovemaking. A guy with an eager fat face, bean-sized eyes was next to her. The fat of his body shook while he was talking. There were varieties of precious colorful stone rings on his big fat fingers. Each of them was the storage ring used to store stuff, which was containing the unknown number of marvelous treasures. A middle-aged scholar in a blue blouse, who had a cold face and a cruel, wicked appearance, clasped his hands behind his back while walking and thinking of something. 7 females and males with different levels of cultivation space, who wore different kinds of clothes, were walking behind those 3 people with respectful faces. They were discussing something with each other and quietly observing the 3 people ahead, as if they were afraid that their noises could be too loud, and thus they would be scolded by the 3 people ahead. The 3 people leading the group were chatting and laughing, gradually coming close to Shiryan's group from the opposite direction. The flirty woman unintentionally glanced at Shiryan and then immediately turned around and continued talking with the fat guy next to her. However, after a few steps, she seemed to have remembered something, turned around again looking at Shiryan, then lifted her finger with the painted nail, pointing towards Shiryan from a distance, and said with surprise, You are that little rascal. Recently, Hai kept sending his people to her place to ask for information. Shiryan's image also came across her mind sometimes. As suddenly seeing Shiryan on this sun island of the 3 gods sect, she instantly remembered. Protector Sui, long time no see. Shiryan slightly laughed. The flirty woman was Sui Weru of the Yin Yang Wonderland. When Shiryan and Xia Xinyan had gotten stranded on a desert island, they had got on an iron boat of the Yin Yang Wonderland and had made contact with Sui Weru for a period. As he had refused to be the subordinate of this woman, he had been harmed by the unity of this bitch and Li Zhuang, almost becoming a corpse of the corpse's god sect. The fat guy next to her was the great elder Chen Duo of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland. The ferocious scholar in the blue blouse was Dong Fenghe. On the Menluo Island, because of the ice-cold flame, Shiryan had suffered a great loss in Chen Duo's and Dong Fenghe's hands. If he hadn't been lucky, he could have had been killed. Shiryan's eyes were half-closed. His face was strange and unpredictable. He revealed a smile. Chapter 300, You Can't Go. Chapter 300, You Can't Go. Sui Weru, Chen Duo, and Dong Fenghe all knew Shiryan. Among them, only Sui Weru didn't know of his relations with the Yang family. After the incident on the Menluo Island, Chen Duo and Dong Fenghe had suffered a great pressure, been blamed and punished by their masters. From that, they had also known Shiryan's origin and identity. After being astonished by the encounter with Shiryan, Sui Weru suddenly remembered the important matter that Hai had instructed her. After staring at Shiryan for a while, she burst into laughter, then spoke to Chen Duo and Dong Fenghe besides her. This little rascal and I used to be interrelated with each other that year. I didn't expect that 5 years later, he could now step on the Sun Island. It is very interesting. While smilingly talking, Sui Weru quietly winked at Chen Duo and Dong Fenghe, signaling these guys to take actions to help her give Shiryan a lesson. Little rascal, we meet again. The fat on Chen Duo's face shook as he put on a broad smile. Because of you, I have suffered many difficulties. I have paid not a small price for what happened on the Menluo Island. You have hidden really well though. Because of you, almost 100 of the Dongfeng family's members have all died. 7 islands have also been completely mopped up. I have been badly blamed for this as well. Dongfeng's face became somber while speaking. Sui Weru was surprised, covered her mouth subconsciously, exposing fear. She looked at Shiryan, then swept her eyes to Chen Duo and Dong Fenghe, who were angrily gritting their teeth. She finally couldn't help but scream out, "Oh, you guys all know him." Dong Fenghe harumphed coldly and said, not only knowing but also being deeply impressed. Chen Duo didn't reply. Although the smile on his face was still friendly, he nodded toward the fellows behind him. The followers of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland understood what their leader meant. They dispersed out with a cold smile on their faces and then besieged Shiryan in only 3 breaths. Are you Shiryan? The layers of fat on Chen Duo's body shook violently. His bean-sized eyes shot out a cold light. If it were 3 years ago, I wouldn't have dared to do anything to you. Regretfully, now it is different from before. After Yang Tian Emperor has been confined, the Yang family remains just a name. Presently, if I want to do something to you, I am afraid that no one can help you. Shiryan's look was frigid and emotionless. A faint smile beamed out from the corners of his mouth. His eyes coldly raked over the 5 people surrounding him, then said, "These 5 people only don't seem enough to catch me." Not enough. As Chin Duo burst into laughter, the fat on his body shook violently. He said, "All of them, and you are ranked at the same Earth realm. You alone can deal with 5 of them? Don't be so overconfident." Dongfeng he knitted his eyebrows, quietly took a few steps back. His eyes scanned over the 3 people of Tianmo's group, but couldn't see through their real cultivation base. Thus, he felt a little bit suspicious and didn't dare to act recklessly. Chinduo and Sui Werue also moved back silently and didn't take any actions by themselves. In fact, as they couldn't figure out the cultivation base of the 3 people of Tianmo's group, they wanted to use those 5 Earth Realm warriors to probe, hopefully to force Tianmo and the other 2 guys to take actions in order to know their exact cultivation base. Chinduo and his group knew that a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. The Yang family's potential was still very tremendous. Although they had confidently said that Yang Tian Emperor had been confined and that the Yang family was currently merely a name, they still felt frightened deeply inside. They assumed that Tianmo, Kaba, and Yimeng were the high-class warriors of the Yang family, hence, they didn't dare to take any actions yet. Do we have to kill them all? Tianmo slightly squinted, directly used his soul to ask for Shiyan's opinion. Shiyan shook his head, signaling the 3 people of Tianmo's group to step away. Until 3 of them were already around 10 meters away, he suddenly stormed into one Earth Realm warrior of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland. A horrendous flow of aura was discharging from his body all of a sudden. The electric shift had been used. Shiyan's figure was like electricity, or Jiaolong jumping out of the sea. The blue stones underneath his feet were broken into small blocks. Fist-sized stone rubbles were flung out everywhere, floating around in the air together with his sturdy body, then dashed altogether towards those people ahead. The blue stones were crumbled as if they were tossed up by a big hand. Countless broken blue stones were dancing in the air. Together with the ear-splitting sound, all of the bluestone rubbles plunged towards those 5 warriors. Crack, crack. His sturdy body was like a big heavy club, striking the chest of one Earth Realm warrior of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland. The sound of broken bones resounded. This warrior's body was like a sharp sword flying towards the opposite way. When this warrior was still in the air, 7 holes on his face had already bled. He had been dead even before falling down on the ground. Without any resistance, the Earth Realm warrior of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland had been killed in such a short time. He hadn't even had time to take out his spiritual treasure. Chinduo grimaced and was startled. His bean-sized eyes beamed out a terrified light. Dongfeng's face changed. He became gloomier. Suerue was frightened at heart, unbelievably looking at Shiyan. She backed off a few steps unconsciously, extending the distance with Shiyan while her red lips were shivering. Swoosh, swoosh. The rubbles in the sky like hundreds of powerful and tremendous iron fists, from Shiyan in the center, shot out circularly. Hundreds of flows of violent purified power had been added to the bluestones, inside of which also had some streams of soul senses that were hardly detected. Countless rubbles, which were like fists with eyes, flew around bringing the extremely outrageous aura that covering the rest of the 4 warriors of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland. Against everyone's expectation, those flying bluestone blocks didn't fall down but revolved in the air. After every short amount of time being revolved, the bluestone blocks' aura became more tremendous. As their forces were mightier, the murderous power also increased naturally. Not far from here, some warriors who saw the fight happening were surprised as well as excited. They noisily came closer, but kept a safe distance, observing from afar. Chinduo's eyes flared up a murderous look. He revealed a snicker while his fat arm, which was like a pig's feet, had already jutted out of his sleeve. He seemed to be about to take actions. It was unknown when some beams of powerful red light suddenly shot out from the bush nearby. The beams of red light fell down exactly on Chinduo's arms, which had just jutted out of his sleeve. The burning flame produced more fires on Chinduo's arm. More than 5,000 of true sunfires went through that arm of his, condensed in his palm, but didn't launch any attacks. They seemed to warn him not to take actions. Chinduo's fat face changed in fear. He felt freezing inside while looking at the nearby bush. Li Fu of the Three Gods sect was also as fat as Chenduo, with a broad smile on his face as well. He walked out of the bush embarrassedly, clasped his hands to respectfully greet Chenduo while smilingly said, "Sorry, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to target Chenji. However, according to our sect's rule, warriors with the same level can battle on the island, but the predecessors with the higher realm are not allowed to get involved. This is the strictest rule. Chenji, please forgive and let it go." Chenduo looked at Li Fu with a strange face. His eyes were full of suspicions. Chenduo did know that the Three Gods sect had this rule, but it wasn't always rigid. There had been some people violating this rule sometimes, but the Three Gods sect wouldn't have strongly interfered. On the previous day, he still had had some drinks with Li Fu, talking and laughing. They had even discussed some rare cultivating materials with each other. As being fat, people with the same sky realm, Li Fu and he shared many things in common. As he actually had a good fellowship with Li Fu, although he had known that Li Fu had been nearby, he hadn't really bothered and had almost taken actions to humiliate Shi Yan. Unexpectedly, as soon as he was about to move, Li Fu appeared out of nowhere. This annoyed him very much as he didn't know why Li Fu covered up Shi Yan. Under Chenduo's scrutinized look, Li Fu only forced a smile, shook his head, clasped his hands to greet, but didn't loosen his force, which was oppressing Chenduo. Boom, 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 boom. At this time, low gloomy sounds reverberated constantly. The four warriors of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland had been hit by countless bluestones. Blood gushed out from their bodies. One after the other fell down on the ground and never stood up again. Among these four warriors, 3 of them had had their heads blossomed. The other one had been hit through his eyes, piercing into his brain. They were all miserably dead. After the rebels had fallen down on the ground, Shi Yan was still standing coldly. He had actually never taken any actions. After the only hit that had killed the first warrior, the Bluestone's power had been constantly increasing. The recent tremendous attack seemed not to be caused by him. However, everyone who looked at his frigid and emotionless eyes would have the feeling that those 4 warriors of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland had been dead in his hands. The flows of pure aura quietly flew out from those 5 warriors and then slowly went into the pores on his body, being completely absorbed by all the meridians. The whole occurrence was not easy to be detected by ordinary people. The corpses of the 5 dead warriors shriveled gradually as if they had completely lost all of the water and blood. Li Fu revealed a forced smile, then shouted, "Clean it up quickly." Some warriors in the Three Gods sect costumes appeared from several dark corners all of a sudden. They calmly carried the 5 dead bodies away after taking out the storage bags from the dead warriors and throwing them to Chenduo. Not long after that, the 5 dead bodies disappeared. Even the broken bluestones were quickly paved with new bluestones. Shi Yan indifferently looked at Li Fu with a frigid face. Li Fu felt awkward under Shi Yan's scrutinized look. Sweat already beaded on his back. "Let's go." Dong Fenghe seemed to figure out something, signaling Chenduo, who was extremely enraged. He said, "It seems that the Three Gods sect wants to protect this little rascal. Don't mess around here anymore. We will see him later." Chenduo harumphed coldly, flipped his sleeves, and left. Sui Werue looked at Shi Yan bewilderedly. With full of surprise and suspicion, she then also left, following the other 2 people. "You can't go." Shi Yan spoke up frigidly all of a sudden. The complexions of the 3 people Chenduo, Dong Fenghe, and Sui Werue changed slightly. The 3 of them stopped, turning around with a sober countenance under the attentive looks of some warriors from afar. "Little rascal, do you really want to die?" Chenduo coldly smiled. The usual smiling look on his face had completely vanished. "Make them more obedient." Shi Yan knitted his eyebrows, nodded his head to signal Tianmo. A violent tornado of souls like the angry surging sea, which was released by Tianmo, suddenly stormed outward and covered the sea of consciousness of Chenduo, Dong Fenghe, and Sui Werue. Their faces changed dramatically. They couldn't help but scream out in pain. Their eyes were full of fear, unbelievably looking at Tianmo. "God realm." The 3 of them shouted simultaneously. Now they finally knew Tianmo's real cultivation realm. Chapter 301, Showing the Real Ability. Chapter 301, Showing the Real Ability. Tianmo instantly took actions. His tremendous soul, which was dangerous as a deep abyss or a surging sea, submerged the three people of Chenduo's group just in a blink. The seas of consciousness of Chenduo's group were like the flickering flames of an oil lamp under the wind that could die out at any minute. Now, Chenduo, Dongfanghe, Sui Werue knew Tianmo's real realm, which frightened them so much that they hardly uttered a word nor had any resistant intentions. They just hoped that the three-god sect would quickly send their high-class warriors to maintain justice. Some white-gray rays that looked like ferocious solid needles shot out from deep inside of Tianmo's eyes. He calmly looked at Chenduo, Dongfanghe, and Sui Werue, who were holding their heads with miserable faces, screaming out constantly. They felt that their souls could be broken shortly, then both their bodies and souls would perish. Young Master Yan, Li Fu couldn't pretend that he didn't know Shi Yan. He took one step forward, clasped his hands and nattered, "This place is the three-god sect's territory, and we have our own rules. Young Master Yan, please don't put us in an awkward situation." Not far from here, about 10 warriors of other forces were observing, didn't dare to come closer. But they all felt startled and shocked. They didn't know Shi Yan. However, because Chenduo, Dongfanghe, and Sui Werue had arrived at the Sun Island a long time earlier, their activities on the island had been very vibrant. Many people knew about them and their identities. Perhaps Sui Werue's position in the evil wonderland was not high, but Chenduo and Dongfanghe were the important persons of the spirit treasure wonderland and the Dongfang family. Regardless of either the cultivation base or the realm, these two people were very outstanding. Together with their noble status, not many ordinary people wanted to mess with them. Shi Yan had messed around with them though, which surprised a lot of people. However, they were more curious about Shi Yan's identity. After Yang Tian Emperor had been confined, all the forces of the Yang family had vanished. The rank of the Yang family had dropped tens of thousands of zhang. Theoretically, there shouldn't be any members of the Yang family to join this gathering, but Shi Yan was here. Not only did he come here, but he also brought a God Realm warrior with him. In the Kiara Sea, God Realm warriors were the peak of all the existences. Only the leaders of powerful forces were able to enter this realm. Facing any types of forces, a God Realm warrior was always a very important and terrifying person. Although there had always been a rumor that the Yang family didn't just have one God Realm warrior, who was Tian Emperor, other people had never witnessed any other God Realm warriors of the Yang family. Tianmo's appearance had astonished a lot of people and also brought suspicions at the same time. Was he the hidden God Realm warrior of the Yang family? With this thought, everyone's looks now gazed at Tianmo with fear and respect. They discreetly remembered every single bit of Tianmo's commotions to tell their fellows later. Young Master Yan. Li Fu miserably begged, but didn't dare to give the warning like what he had done with Chenduo. Shi Yan's face remained unchanged. He knitted his eyebrows slightly, his eyes coldly looked at the three people of Chenduo's group who were screaming bitterly under Tianmo's horrendous soul attack. The seas of consciousness of these three people were gradually swamped with Tianmo's soul, which was like thousands of sabers slashing their sea of consciousness. Suffering the visual soul pain was many times more uncomfortable than suffering external injuries. Shi Yan had already experienced this plenty of times. Those three people were screaming and crying in fear. Sui Werue was painfully screeching so hard that tears and snots also flowed out. Shi Yan had felt joyful looking at this scene at first, but the joy gradually turned down. He started feeling eventually disrelished. Shi Yan swung his arm, signaling Tianmo to stop. Those three people of Chenduo's group were trembling violently as their seas of consciousness had gradually calmed down after having been stirred up into restlessness. Silver patterned circles suddenly diffused out from those three people's heads. Their eyes, which had been blanked and dazed, were now restored to be conscious little by little, and then totally recovered afterwards. Those three people were now disheveled and dirty. Their bodies were covered with dust. Their faces were full of tears and snots mixing up. They looked really miserable. Hick. One female disciple of the Three Gods sect suddenly jeered as the scene looked very absurd. She instantly felt improper, quickly stuck her tongue out, and shut up. Several warriors of other forces, who were also watching, couldn't help but want to burst into laughing. However, they had to uneasily restrain it, which made them look very strange. After having regained their consciousness, as the three people of Chinduo's group saw their blasé appearance, they were all so angry that they wanted to vomit blood, resentful for not being able to dig a hole and plunge down there. They didn't dare to raise their heads up, hastily dusted off their faces, and then covered their faces, leaving without even having the intention of questioning Shiyan. "You can't go just yet." Shiyan shouted out loud again. The bodies of those tree people trembled. They turned their heads around with hateful faces and stared at Shiyan with a daring manner. Especially Sui Werue, who had always boasted about her elegant and charming appearance, now looked very crummy, like an insane woman in front of many people. She had never ever thought about this humiliation, not even in her most unpleasant dreams. She felt extremely ashamed. Her grimaced face looked even more furious as her resentful eyes contained an endless murderous aura, as if she could uncontrollably risk her life at any minute. "Shiyan, you will have to pay 10 times of this humiliation today," Dongfeng he said with a cruel face. "Go back and tell your predecessors, 3 of your forces, each will have to give out 5 islands to compensate for the Yang family." Shiyan didn't care about Dongfeng's intimidation. He spoke up while standing still. "I want to see your compensations in 1 month." As soon as he had finished his words, most of the warriors who were watching nearby clamored. While the demon dwellers were invading on a mass scale currently, all forces should unite, putting all of their efforts to deal with the demon dwellers instead of rebelling. Shiyan, however, did the opposite. He clearly wanted to fish in troubled waters and didn't even have the intention to negotiate. What was happening? Everyone was impaled by fear. They secretly blamed Shiyan for being lowly and for not being concerned of the current big picture. They were also frightened because of Shiyan's shamelessness and arrogance at the same time. "Based on what reasons do you dare to have such a request?" Chinduo gritted his teeth and asked. "On only them." Shiyan casually pointed at Tianmo, Kaba, and Yimeng. Kaba and Yimeng quietly revealed a cold smile, arrogantly looking at the other people. The earth-shaking aura was suddenly projected from their bodies. The warriors surrounding instantly felt that their seas of consciousness were violently shaking. The profound chi in their bodies was like wild horses escaping from the riddles and not listening to the orders anymore. They felt helpless deep inside. The warriors with low realms quickly sank to their knees, as their knees were totally flabby. It looked like they were being pressed down by a big mountain. God Realm warriors. Needless to say more, everyone immediately knew that Yimeng and Kaba were also the God Realm warriors just through their tremendous auras. 3 God Realm warriors. Someone among the warriors surrounding mourned. Every one of them felt freezing, subconsciously moved backwards while their faces turned to totally white pale. Li Fu bent down so low that his head almost touched his chest, his fat body slightly trembled. He no longer had any intentions of begging Shiyan to stop. Chinduo and Dongfeng he were bewildered, as if their brain had been knocked out and shaken till dazed. Suerue had actually had the intentions of vengeance earlier. However, she was now holding her ruffled hair. Her face was half smiling, half crying. Her eyes were full of desperation and submission. The intentions of taking revenge had vanished out of her mind afterwards. "You can go now." Shiyan's face was disturbed. He waved his hand and urged, "Get lost. Don't let me see you again." The 3 people of Chinduo's group were scared out of their wits, miserably running away like stray dogs, staggering on the way as if their steps couldn't be even steady. The shock that Shiyan had brought them had been far beyond their endurance. Moreover, Tianmo had also messed with their souls, which had led them to the scene of severe misery. "This thing," Li Fu raised up his head afterward, even with a humbler manner. "I still have to report what has happened to my predecessor. Young Master Yan, please don't blame me. We have our own rules." "What?" Shiyan nodded calmly. "I didn't kill them, just threatened them." "Does it also violate the rules?" Li Fu was bewildered, seriously thought for a while. He then felt that this also made sense. The three people of Chunduo's group didn't get injured seriously, only lost their faces in front of many people. They were still alive and healthy, so the rule wasn't violated indeed. We'll take a walk around. While Li Fu was still in a daze, Shiyan nodded towards the three people of Yi Tianmo's group and then stepped forward passing Li Fu. As the scene had been over, the surrounding warriors also dispersed out with astonished faces. Everyone disappeared shortly. Inside of the dark red stone chamber, a group of warriors of the corpse's god sect was wearing black tunics. Their bodies were full of miasmatic aura. Their eyes were frigid and cruel, looking at the two wooden coffins in the chamber. Yin Hai was one of them. In the chamber, the two sky corpses were being confined inside in the wooden coffins. One warrior of the corpse's god sect with a fierce face was wearing a devil mask. His body was covered in a big black tunic. His eyes shot out a cruel, devilish, deep blue light. Hierarch, did something really happen with these two sky corpses? Yin Hai was standing beside him, bending down with a respectful manner, asking for his opinion. The hierarch of the corpse's god sect slightly nodded. The devilish deep blue light was retrieved little by little. These two sky corpses seemed to have had a little of consciousness. This is really a miracle that could amaze everyone. These two sky corpses couldn't definitely have had the consciousness in such a short time like this. It is still very long time before they could become the king corpses. They couldn't have had the transformation that quickly. Their transformation is probably related to the little rascal that year. Yin Hai considered carefully for a while before speaking. That little rascal, the hierarch of the corpse's god sect, harumphed coldly. His frigid eyes shifted toward Yin Hai and said, "Could only one weak warrior have been even more miraculous than the secret technique of the corpse's god sect which has been transmitted until now? If he's able to make the sky corpses become the king corpses in a short time, the corpse temper technique that has been studied by the corpse's god sect's predecessors then becomes a joke." Yin Hai felt fearfully freezing, quickly bowed his head, and blaming himself for being stupid. "I will temporarily control their consciousness that has just woken up. If they are not affected by the outer forces, these two sky corpses will no longer have any anomalous changes in a short time." The hierarch of the corpse's god sect contemplated for a while before further instructing. "Before the gathering on the Sun Island finishes, you just need to keep an eye on them." Chapter 302, Understood. Chapter 302, Understood. Shiyan suddenly stopped. He didn't understand why the two flows of feeble souls, which had originally hovered around inside his body, had disappeared all of a sudden as if they had been grabbed and thrown out by someone's powerful sensing forces. Those two souls were not really strong, but they thoroughly understood the way to control the soul forces. They were not supported by any other soul senses except for their own admirable feelings. Although Shiyan didn't have a profound understanding of souls, he had only based it on his own interests to discover all of the secrets of those two souls. When those two souls disappeared, his connection with them was also interrupted. He could just only identify the general direction of those two souls. When those souls vanished, their direction had also changed, which left him no time to take actions and was hardly able to define their exact direction. "What is it?" Yi Tianmo was bewildered, incomprehensibly looked at him. "Has something happened?" Shiyan nodded and said, "My sense has some changes." Suddenly, it couldn't recognize the two souls. Perhaps something has happened there. After all, what has happened? How come you've only had that feeling after we've come here? Is there somebody trying to intentionally instruct us on something? Yi Tianmo's innermost feelings had been vibrated, as many speculations had come up in his mind. He himself was very wise, so he definitely had many suspicions. Especially the Sun Island, which was presently packed with many warriors, and the other forces from the different seas would arrive shortly. The situation on the Sun Island had never been as complicated as of now. "Not really." After shaking his head and contemplating for a while, Shiyan said, "Forget it. If we can't sense it, we will directly go there to check it out. It is near here anyway. We probably can find out something." Yi Tianmo showed his agreement. Suddenly, the three people Yi Tianmo, Kaba, Yimeng all raised their heads up, looking towards the sky with serious faces. Shi Yan's sea of consciousness shook. He vaguely realized a little pressure, as if someone in the sky was peeping at him. He couldn't help but lift his head up, releasing his soul consciousness towards the clouds in the sky. His soul consciousness spread out, turned into thousands of strings of consciousness dispersing everywhere, moving in the sky. Each of consciousness in his head was trying to discover all senses, including the tiny ones. However, he still didn't realize anything. He then had to retrieve his consciousness. "It is the soul of a God Realm warrior peeping us," Tianimo said with a serious and solemn face, "and not only one." Shi Yan nodded with his unchanged face. He seemed to have soon anticipated something, faintly said, "The three of you didn't restrain your forces, instead, released your God Realm powers. It has obviously attracted some people's attention, not to mention that you are a big question for the people here. Thus, being watched by other God Realm warriors is something normal. Should we warn them a little bit?" Yimeng grinned and then said with a frigid face, "As being God Realm warriors, using soul forces to fight is not normal. In terms of this, the three of us can certainly prevent our opponents. The most profound understanding of the demonic Sound Clan is the soul fighting." Tianmo and Kaba also showed their arrogance and confidence. Shi Yan shook his head while smiling and said, "No need. Although we've come to the Sun Island this time to intentionally display our abilities, we shouldn't be too arrogant and obstinate. Otherwise, other forces will unite and become our enemies, which is not good for us. Right now, the meeting on the island hasn't started yet. Everyone all has their own plans. We should observe the situations of some important persons here first to see what their thoughts are." The three people of Tianmo's group nodded, implicating that they had understood. Shi Yan continued to walk. It took him 2 hours to arrive at the place where the sense had originated. He saw some red houses from a distance, all of which were made of sharp red stones. Many images of beasts and birds were engraved on the stone pillars. A block consisted of about 12 houses. Grapes and bananas were planted around the area. This was actually the scene of tropical forests. However, when Shi Yan had arrived, he had felt that the Yin aura here was very dense, as it overwhelmed the area with gloomy, devilish, icy auras. The houses were burning hot. Even insects couldn't exist here. It seemed that even the stupidest creature also knew that this place was abnormal. "Very dense Yin aura." Shi Yan knitted his eyebrows while whisperingly said, "This is the place of the corpse's god sect." Li Fu suddenly stormed out, then bent down and said with a humble manner, "Since the followers of the corpse's god sect have come and stayed here, this place has become extremely miasmatic. We also know that the corpse's god sect's members have peculiar personalities, hence, we have arranged for them to stay in this remote area. These houses here all have cellars, which were used to store good wines before. After the corpse's god sect has arrived, these cellars are used to keep the coffins with corpses inside." The corpse burial. Shi Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. A light flashed up in his head. He instantly figured out who had sent out the soul auras to his consciousness earlier. A dusty memory which was like the river water bursting the dike massively rolled back in his head. That was a place similar to the corpse burial area. Exactly. 2 sky corpses. Shi Yan suddenly revealed a smile, looked at Li Fu, nodded and asked, "May I ask you a question? How many senior persons of the corpse's god sect are there in those houses?" Li Fu's face stiffened, laughed, and said with a grimacing face, "This is not allowed to be disclosed, young master. You also know we have rules." "I know that you guys have rules." The storage ring on Shi Yan's finger brightened. A blazing bag emerged in his palm. He smilingly gave the bag, which contained pure crystals, to Li Fu, and gently said, "I only asked the identities of the people staying in those houses." Li Fu was frightened and didn't dare to receive the bag. He bent down, took 3 steps backward, covering his chest while breathing heavily and screaming, "Young Master Yan, you shouldn't ridicule me like this." Shi Yan was bewildered, surprisingly looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Young Master Yan, you have actually known it clearly." Li Fu revealed a forced smile, took another few steps backward again. His face was all red. "Inside your body, There is something that is able to oppress my powers. If you stand too close to me, my martial spirits will be very frightened." Shi Yan was startled and his eyes became confused. After hesitating for a while, he suddenly asked, "What you meant was that there is something inside of my body that possibly oppresses your martial spirits and makes you subconsciously be scared of me." Li Fu bent down, nodding constantly. "I didn't expect that it also has this effect. The martial spirits of Ouyang Ji seems to have some effects with the Three God sect." Shi Yan quietly mumbled to himself, then smiled, meaningfully looked at Li Fu and said, "Hasn't your hierarch instructed you to follow us closely? I am not a normal guest. It is why I have such a special privilege, isn't it?" Li Fu's face slightly changed. He nodded once again, miserably said, "Young master, you are not like the other people." What else did he say? "I need to pay attention to you to avoid any unexpected events. That is why when Chen Duo wanted to take actions with you, I immediately got involved in preventing it. However, you have had the support from honorable people. I actually did a useless thing." Li Fu awkwardly smiled. "That's how it is." Shi Yan thought for a while, then nodded, looked at Li Fu and said, "The fact that your hierarch had laid his eyes on me is already a violation of the rule. I don't think he will blame you. If you don't tell me, I myself will rummage through your memory to find it. This is your reluctant choice anyway." Shi Yan quietly glanced at Yi Tianmo. Li Fu sweated a lot, feeling that his back had been totally wet. He cursed Shi Yan for being cruel and ignoble. His face, however, displayed fear. He hastily said, Don't. I will tell you." "How can I not say it?" "Say it." The hierarch of the corpse's god sect, Qingming, together with 5 protectors, more than 30 disciples, and some followers, Li Fu was so frightened and quickly said with a low voice. He told Shi Yan about the information related to the corpse's god sect very clearly. "All right." Shi Yan waited until Li Fu finished, then flipped his sleeve, implicating that he had already dismissed Li Fu. "You'd better go a little bit far from here, otherwise you will not be fine if something happens. Being here is even worse. So, you'd better not linger and get lost." "What do you want to do?" Li Fu frighteningly asked. "You can't just do it recklessly. We have rules." "I know you have rules." Shi Yan felt annoyed and then urged, "If you continue staying here, you might violate the corpse's god sect's rules. You should go back and tell Tang Yuanan that I know what to do. Moreover, let him know that I intentionally have something to do with the corpse's god sect's people." While talking, Shi Yan could sense a strange spiritual power inside his heart, which was as hot as the sun. He quietly poured a stream of the profound qi into it. Through the movement of the profound qi, he captured the scorching power of the sun and secretly poured a little bit of it on Li Fu's body. Li Fu was scared of Shi Yan so much that his whole body sweated. While he was still hesitating, he suddenly felt that his martial spirits reacted violently while the profound qi inside his body was extremely chaotic. Even his sea of consciousness was also shaken constantly as if it was about to fly out of his brain. Li Fu was frightened. He knew that Shi Yan had done something with it. Thus, he didn't dare to hesitate any longer and instantly ran away. Li Fu fled out of sight in just a blink. Even his aura also vanished completely. Shi Yan was astonished. His face looked strange. He retrieved the aura, which was the fusion of the profound qi and the martial spirits. He took a deep breath and then walked towards the temporary residences of the corpse's god sect. Creak! The door of a stone house in the middle of the block suddenly opened, from which miasmatic auras flowed out. "Look, the owner of this place is welcoming us." Shi Yan smiled without any fear and quickly walked over there. On the way, he suddenly spoke up. "I am Shi Yan. I have something to consult the predecessors of the corpse's god sect. I hope the predecessors will instruct me." The 3 people of Yi Tianmo's group quickly followed him. Chapter 303. The Superb Adjoin Corpse's Flame. Chapter 303. The Superb Adjoin Corpse's Flame. Inside the stone hall, cold icy power spread out everywhere. A flow of white dead aura turned out to be composed of devilish faces, wrapping around the stone pillars, which looked like those devils engraved on the stone pillars had just revived. There were 5 oil lanterns mounted on the stone wall. The flames were shiny blue and dim, which brought other people a feeling that these flames could have died out at any time. In front of the wall, at a dark, gloomy corner, there was a figure standing lonely. That person's eyes were glazed. His body was big with the dense miasmatic aura around, which was like a long-time dead corpse. As soon as he had entered this stone house, Shuryen couldn't help but frown. His soul consciousness diffused out but impossibly realized any living auras nor streams of souls. There were no living humans. That figure over there was actually a corpse with a pale face and stiffened limbs, served as a servant. It probably didn't have a high-level position. As it saw Shuryen's group going in, it turned a hook on the wall. A creak sound resounded, and the stone wall in front of Shuryen started to move accordingly to some formation, gradually forming a path running downward. That corpse was still blankly standing at the corner without any human emotions. It didn't even look at Shuryen and the other people as if it only had one mission, which was to open this path. Shuryen's face remained unchanged. He looked at the 3 people of Tian Mo's group and nodded, then mumbled to himself, purposely make a mystery out of simple things. He slowly stepped down on the stone stairs, going deep down inside of the earth. He wanted to see what peculiar things were awaiting him down there. Although the corpse's god sect was mysterious as they had cultivated very inhumane secret techniques which had frightened other people, Shuryen was not afraid of it too much. Anyway, the 3 people of Tian Mo's group had the God Realm cultivation base. In terms of souls, the 3 of them were far better than numerous people, although their body's sturdiness was not as good as the other God Realm warriors. In a battle, the unity of these 3 could easily defeat any God Realm warrior. Shuryen believed that even a God Realm warrior at the highest level would have run away strenuously when being besieged by them. Under the powerful soul oppression, it could sometimes have been more dangerous than a physical attack. With the 3 of them having his back, not to mention this temporary residence of the corpse's god sect, even the headquarters of the corpse's god sect would not be able to stop him from entering. After having gone for about 10 zhang, Shuryen still didn't see any lights. Luckily, the 3 people of Tian Mo's group was still following him closely. Thus, he wasn't scared, just quietly diffused his soul consciousness around to sense even the tiniest transformation, trying to find the living aura. Puff. In the ink-black darkness where one impossibly saw one's own 5 fingers, a weak green light suddenly appeared. It didn't look different from bonfires hovering around in the air. Besides, there was also a dull flame of an oil lamp which was like a ferocious ghost observing around. A cool breeze flooded over, wanted to absorb itself into his body. With a cold smile on his face, Shuryen activated the heating forces of the sun-refined spirits. The scorching aura of those forces moved around in his body, burning that cool breeze up. Boom! A blue flame inflamed ahead of them. After that blue flame had ignited, 10 deep blue flames suddenly emerged. In just a breath, there appeared 18 cups of oil lamps with flickering flames everywhere. The flames lit up the place, hence, the scene also started to appear. A line of coffins was placed neatly across the cellar. A flow of dense dead aura spread out from inside of every coffin. The dead aura was chalky. A flow of dead aura slowly flew to Shuryen. Shuryen's eyes closed slightly. He suddenly shouted, "Show yourself." The heat of the 1,000-year earth flame discharged out of his body. Just in a short time, Shuryen's body had turned into an igniter. Many flames like torches burst out from his body. Before that dead aura could reach him, it had already smoked fizzingly and been burnt up into ashes. None of the dead aura could have touched him. Some figures, one by one, descended on the coffins from the roof of the cellar. The hierarch of the corpse's god sect Qingming was wearing a black tunic and a blue mask with fangs. He stood on a coffin while his green pupils kept scanning Shuryen. He then said with a weak voice, "Are you one of the Yangs?" Yin Hai stood on the coffin on the left, quietly evaluated Shuryen with somber eyes. "Consider it true." Shuryen nodded indifferently, closed his eyes sensing around. He suddenly goggled, looking toward the 2 wooden coffins under Yin Hai's feet, then said with a smile, "I come here for the 2 sky corpses in those 2 coffins. It can be said that they and I somehow have fate." When I had arrived at the Sun Island, these two sky corpses had called for me, which led me here. It's you indeed. Inhai's face suddenly changed, becoming more somber. He then grinned and said, "Little rascal, at the burial area number 93 that year, I didn't know which way you used to enthrall my sky corpses, making them slaughter even their own fellows and helping you escape from the burial area. Well, you are now on the Sun Island. You want to make use of these two sky corpses again, don't you? Ha ha ha, today, as the owner of these sky corpses on this island, I want to see how you can break through my oppressive forces." Inhai, shut up. Qingming bowed and shouted to prevent Inhai from babbling. He then coldly and seriously looked at Shuryen. He uttered weakly, "At the burial area that year, these two sky corpses were controlled by you and didn't obey the great elder Inhai's commands. They woke up and acted accordingly to your will. Is this true?" Shuryen thought for a while, nodded, and said, "That's true." There emerged many small flames inside those green eyes. The flames seemed to have some consciousness that allowed them to cooperate with the dead auras here to be able to completely control all the corpses. "Move." Qingming turned his head, glancing at Inhai. Inhai followed that command, leaped up, and landed next to another elder. Two wooden coffins automatically flew up by some unknown forces. The white dead aura covered everywhere. The two coffins then descended in front of Shuryen. The hierarch of the corpse's god sect, Qingming, stretched out his left hand, pointing at the two wooden coffins, then shouted with a specific tone, "Go out." Boom. The two lids of the coffins shot up, two sky corpses, one male, one female, whom Shuryen had seen at the burial area number 93, sat up. Their eyes were emotionless. Their bodies were rigid and cold, which looked like a puppet being manipulated by someone. Shuryen slightly squinted. "Is it true that you have seen these two sky corpses?" Qingming asked feebly. Shuryen nodded and replied, "That's true. But these two sky corpses seem to be oppressed by some forces. The aura inside their bodies is not working. They should have definitely been sealed. Currently, they are only puppets in your hands and totally let you control them without having the slightest intentions of resistance. This little rascal has exceptional eyes." Qingming faintly laughed. His laughter was similar to the cry of a ferocious ghost, which was extremely unpleasant to one's ears. Together with the laughter that could freeze other people, the green pupils of the hierarch of the corpse's god sect Qingmin were getting darker and darker. Many green flames, which were as big as his fingertips, suddenly shot out from his eyes. The green flame radiated a kind of aura that scared people out of their wits, slowly flying toward the two sky corpses. The superb Adjoin corpse's flame. Right at this time, the ice-cold flame instantly sent out a message. "This is one of the heaven flames, ranked the 9th. As soon as this corpse flame touches a living creature, the blood cells inside the body will become anomalous. It then becomes a servant corpse, which is controlled by the superb Adjoin corpse's flame." Shuryen was shaken, moving backward 3 steps while quietly activated all kinds of defensive forces inside his body to guard against the possibility in which the hierarch of the corpse's god sect would use the superb Adjoin corpse's flame to attack him. The green eyes of Qingming lit up strangely as if they could see through Shuryen's precaution. Many feeble flames, which were controlled by his hands, slowly flew out and disappeared inside the two sky corpses that were sitting neatly straight up. As soon as the superb Adjoin corpse's flame had gotten into the two sky corpses, the two of them, one male and one female, also slowly recovered a little bit of aura. The oppressive forces inside of their bodies had melted like the snow in summer. Their rigid bodies became more flexible. "Little rascal, is the flame inside your body one of the heaven flames?" Qingming didn't look at the two sky corpses. Instead, he paid attention to Shuryen's body. Among the scorching flames, the sun god of Tang Yuannan belongs to the sun's heat, so what does your heaven flame belong to? "I know you have the superb Adjoin corpse's flame." Shuryen frowned, quietly communicated with the tree people of Yi Tianmo's group, informing them the danger of the superb Adjoin corpse's flame. After that, he spoke up with a low voice, "You are the hierarch of the corpse's god sect, possessed the superb Adjoin corpse's flame, master of several secret corpse control techniques of the corpse's god sect. It seems that you have underrated your real cultivation ability. That's totally true. Qingming wasn't humble at all and revealed a devilish smile. Although the flame inside your body is indeed a little outstanding, its opposing ability is probably as strong as my superb Adjoin corpse's flame. Regretfully, your cultivation base is too low, impossible to truly control it. Therefore, I can easily dominate you. Do you believe it or not? Yes. Shuryan nodded, then said with a mocking tone, but you are not able to do it. Unable to do it? The green flame inside Qingming's eyes flickered a little bit. The dancing icy aura emitted from the pores on his body. At the same time, the three people of Tianmo's group also realized that the icy aura started to approach them. More than tens of thousands of soul auras from the three of them flowed out like endless tides, besieging the disciples and the hierarch of the corpse's god sect. Choices of master of having mastered, mastering, but cannot be left alone as master. Chapter 304. The King Corpse Made a Roar. Chapter 304. The King Corpse Made a Roar. All of the white dead auras in the cellar were beaten earthshakenly, which was like a tornado blasting everywhere. Sharp saber winds ear-splittingly shrieked, leaving many traces on the walls. Under the dim lights of the oil lamps, on the walls of the cellar emerged countless scratches that were extremely deep, which looked like they were being slashed by a sharp weapon. Numerous interlacing scratches were heavily carved deep into the stone walls. Peculiar lights zoomed over out of nowhere, approaching and raiding on the cellar. The white-in aura abruptly engulfed the flock of the corpse's god sect's elders, creating a very long-in aura wall wrapping around them. More than tens of thousands of visible transparent soul forces, which were like the starlight coming from the ether and densely shining on the earth, were violently attacking every corner of the cellar. The three people of Tianmo's group shut their eyes half-closed. Although they were not moving, their bodies were the gathering place of the starlight. Each beam of the spectacular starlight entangled everyone in the cellar. Even Shuryan was not an exception. Hundreds of flows of starlight pierced into his sea of consciousness. Those were the soul starlight of Tianmo's group, which was like endlessly long as well as extremely tenacious fibers. That soul starlight made it impossible for him to use his sea of consciousness, nor the five devils nor his host's soul. The three people of Tianmo's group obviously didn't target him. However, the oppression that he was suffering was not just a joke. The green pupils inside the eyes of the corpse's god sect's hierarch were full of the starlight fibers. The three people of Tianmo's group was controlling him. Through the unknown marvelous secret techniques, most of the starlight fibers had penetrated into Qingming's body, entered his head, and tied up his host's soul and his sea of consciousness. The host's soul and the sea of consciousness were the foundations of a warrior, an essential place to control the superb Adjoin corpse's flame. So, when the host's soul and the sea of consciousness were limited, Qingming wasn't able to release the consciousness, which obviously prevented him from controlling the superb Adjoin corpse's flame and thus from intimidating Shuryan. The icy aura was extremely heavy. The hierarch of the corpse's god sect Qingming was putting all of his powers to break those soul fibers. The three people of Tianmo kept smiling faintly, uniting to increase the oppressive soul forces, making extreme use of all kinds of the demonic sound clan's Upanishads. As being attacked by their souls, Qingming had to struggle very hard as the light in his green eyes gradually became gloomier. Hai, with a somber face, was sitting straight on a wooden coffin in silence. His eyes were overwhelmed with fear while his body trembled. He had already realized the true cultivation base of the three people of Tianmo's group. Those three God Realm warriors were using their powerful souls to oppress others, which led to the appearance of countless swirls in the cellar. Anyone who stood close to this place would not be able to escape from the soul attraction forces of the three people of Tianmo's group. If any intentions of resistance appeared in their heads, they would have to suffer the three people's tide of souls. The demonic sound clan profoundly understood the soul attack. This understanding was far beyond that of the human warriors. Currently, the three of them united, releasing different kinds of miraculous souls that prevented the hierarch of the corpses god sect to release the heaven flame. As the hierarch had no more strength to protest, he couldn't do anything else except for miserably sustaining. In a soul-attacking fight, although they were at the same god realm, Adjoin alone was enough to dominate him, let alone the three of them uniting with each other. All right. Shi Yan swung his hand and said, I think that Hierarch Qingming shouldn't be overconfident like you were. Don't assume that your abilities alone can turn us into corpses. In fact, Shi Yan had quietly noticed earlier. When the Yin aura concentrated on Qingming's body, he had realized Qingming's wicked intention. The superb Adjoin corpse's flame was hard to deal with. Once this corpse flame flew out of Qingming's body, it would cover the entire cellar, and thus the three people of Tian Mo's group would have been unable to react. Although his 10,000-year earth flame was dangerous, exactly as what Qingming had said, his cultivation base was not high enough to control it. If they were in a real battle, before the 10,000-year earth flame had come close to Qingming, it would have been wrapped up by the superb Adjoin corpse's flame. Hence, he would have become a corpse of Qingming and been enslaved by that corpse flame for his entire life. Qingming had had this intention indeed. He wanted to enslave not only him, but also the three people of Tian Mo's group. That pompous idea had appeared in his head as he had assumed that the power of the superb Adjoin corpse's flame was enough to oppress those three people. Having seen through Qingming's evil intention, Shi Yan hadn't gone easy on him anymore. He immediately commanded the three people of Tian Mo's group to use the most powerful soul oppressive forces to hinder him from using the superb Adjoin corpse's flame. The three people of Tian Mo's group slowly retrieved more than tens of thousands of flows of soul auras. Countless lights in the cellar started to dim and fade away and then turned into billions of light dots, going back into the bodies of the three people of Tian Mo's group, which looked like numerous birds flying back to their nests. There was nothing left in the cellar which had been overwhelmed with murderous aura earlier. The scene was restoring its original peace. All of the elders of the corpse's god sect were wearing grave faces. Their eyes were full of fear and resentment. They didn't dare to act recklessly, though. Qingming's green eyes lit up some green lights. He glanced at Shi Yan and the three people of Tian Mo's group, but didn't say a word. Qingming didn't continue taking actions. I know, because you have realized that the forces inside our bodies were not as mighty as yours. You have arrogantly assumed that relying on your heaven flame alone could have had oppressed the three of us. Tian Mo coldly smiled and said disrespectfully, the demonic sound clan's body structure is not the same as yours. Thus, in the same realm, the demonic sound clan's body cannot be as mighty as the humans. The god power in our bodies isn't as strong as you neither. After pausing for a short while, Tian Mo frigidly continued, however, this doesn't mean that the demonic sound clan's warriors are not as strong as you at the same level. Demonic sound clan? Pagans? Qingming was frightened. He said, turns out you are the pagans. Kaba said, what about pagans? In the ancient times, humankind wasn't the original owner of this continent. Humankind was only one race on this continent, whose power wasn't as strong as those of the other races. If it wasn't because humankind had wicked intentions, took use of the conflicts among the other races to stimulate the war, this continent could have still belonged to our pagan race. Qingming's eyes became serious, scanning all over Kaaba. He then faintly smiled and asked, do you assume that this all that I have? Rome. An earth-shaking roar with full of brutal auras reverberated from inside the earth. Earth-destroyable vibrations were widespread while a flow of tremendous auras covered the entire place at the same time. Suddenly, all of the Ain wooden coffins shook constantly. In this devilish atmosphere, the rattle sounds coming out from inside the coffins had proved that the corpses in those coffins were all active. The faces of Ain Hai's group displayed a great happiness. They couldn't help but shout out loud, Hierarch, you have brought it here. Qingming arrogantly nodded and confidently said, maybe my strength alone is not the opponent of the three of you, but together with that old guy underneath the earth, I am afraid that you can't get out of here in one piece. Shi Yan's face changed. He had known that there was a creature hiding inside the earth. It was the 1,000-year king corpse of the corpse's god sect. The king corpse was the actual mighty fighting machine of the corpse's god sect. All the information related to the king corpse had been spread out in the endless sea. Any of the high-class warriors who used to fight with the king corpse had confirmed that it was very mighty. The king corpse could be compared with the god realm warrior. Its real ability was even much stronger than that of a god realm warrior. The three people of Tian Mo's group quietly chucked their tongues while their eyebrows slammed together. They were able to sense a violent force through their souls. However, although that king corpse had still been hiding inside the earth for the whole time, they hadn't been able to figure it out, which frightened them very much. They felt freezing because of the king corpse's strength. After the king corpse had just made a roar from inside the earth, the entire Sun Island was violently shaken already. The God Realm warriors on the island were startled and then released their soul consciousness altogether towards the corpse's god sex place. Even the sun god Tang Yuannan's face also changed in fear. As soon as he had released his soul consciousness, the three people of Li Fu's group arrived, quickly approached and clearly reported the situation. Shi Yan has come to the corpse's god sex place. Tang Yuannan was startled. Tens of thousands of earth lights emitted from his body and then disappeared into the void. The Yin auras were overwhelming in the cellar. A blazing red of light emerged, gradually enlarged and became a dazzling Sunday's face was distorted. The sun god Tang Yuannan appeared. The light dimmed as the glowing red face of Tang Yuannan emerged. He was frowning, looking at the hierarch of the corpse's god sect, then said, "Qing Mingji, has this place ever done something wrong with you? Why do you want to use the king corpse to destroy my island?" The terrifying light in Qing Ming's eyes lessened a little bit. He took a deep breath and said, "Just mistaken." After a flow of consciousness shot out into underneath the earth from Qing Ming's head, the horrendous aura then slowly receded. The ancient corpses of Qing Ming now stopped roaring and quietly stayed inside the earth. Tang Yuannan stood between Qing Ming and Shi Yan. His back was facing Shi Yan. Although he didn't turn his head around, Shi Yan's body still trembled. He felt that his heart was beating very frantically. His body gradually brightened up like a shooting star in the sky, which made him feel very strange. Tang Yuannan still didn't turn around, but his body had gotten hotter little by little and eventually glowed. Each of the suns gave off a radiant circle of light in the cellar, flooding the cellar with a sea of light. The temperature was gradually increasing. Chapter 305, Joint Owner. Chapter 305, Joint Owner. Shi Yan and Tang Yuannan were 5 meters away from each other. Their bodies had peculiar transformations simultaneously. At this time, there quietly appeared a fanciful connection between them that affected both of their martial spirits. It was the first time they had met. Although they had never known each other's appearance before, the martial spirits inside their bodies had triggered a resonance. Shi Yan slightly shivered, holding his chest, clenching his teeth and cursing under his breath. He didn't know anything regarding the star martial spirits. He basically couldn't control these forces. Shi Yan's heart was beating frantically, deranging all forces inside his body, making them fight against themselves and causing him a lot of pain. Tang Yuannan didn't seem to have any abnormal changes. His brightening gesture showed that he was very comfortable. His body was radiating many circles of light, one by one. These circles of light moved and covered Shi Yan entirely as he pleased. "Damn it!" Shi Yan cursed with a ferocious face. Countless negative feelings inside his meridians erupted violently like a volcano. In an instant, his strong body gradually withered while an extremely devilish force burst out from his meridians. This evil force had a tremendous and mighty momentum, impetuously oppressed the other spiritual forces that were perversely stirring his heart and helped it back to its normal state. After gasping a few breaths and taking 3 steps backward, his radiating body like a cold star gradually recovered. "Oh!" Tang Yuannan slightly uttered, finally turned his head around to look at Shi Yan with an astonished face. His eyes were like the 2 small suns projecting dazzling lights that could frighten other people. Under these powerful eyes, Shi Yan felt painful and didn't dare to look straight to them. Only until the ice-cold flame released the icy power that seeped into his body and slowly gathered in his eyes, he started to adapt with the sunlight from Tang Yuannan's eyes. He then calmly looked at Tang Yuannan and said, "Great Hierarch Tang. We are all from the same sect, no need to be so formal." Tang Yuannan revealed a smile. The sunlight on his body had faded away little by little. He no longer had the intention of testing Shi Yan's ability. Shi Yan relaxed his whole body. The star martial spirits also became restful as if it didn't see the opponent anymore. Hence, it lost interest and stopped provoking and rebelling. Same sect. Shi Yan confusedly smiled, slightly shook his head without daring to say anything more. The hierarch of the corpse's god sect Qingming frigidly and suspiciously looked at Tang Yuannan and then swept his doubtful eyes over Shi Yan. He revealed a cold smile after a while. "I didn't expect that this little rascal had some relations with the three god sect. No wonder why Tang Ji has come here so fast. It seems that you have come here to protect this child." Protect this child? Tang Yuannan seemed to find it very funny, turned around looking at Qingming, then burst into laughter. "Even if I didn't get involved, what could have you done to him?" "Qingming Ji, don't blame me for not warning you. Shi Yan's forces are much stronger than what you see now. You just think about it yourself." Qingming, eyes brightened up. He started to think about the forces behind Shi Yan. "I've come here to tell Qingming Ji that you shouldn't recklessly use the king corpse." Tang Yuannan's face was very calm, as if he was solving an everyday matter. "My island is not able to stand too much of the pressures. I hope Qingming Ji have some regards for me." Tang Yuannan turned his head around looking at Shi Yan, revealed a meaningful smile. "Little rascal, can you behave a little bit? Although you have come to the Sun Island for only 2 hours, 5 Earth Realm warriors have already been killed. 3 forces denounced you to me, and now you are fighting with the hierarch Qingming. What do you want to do after all?" Shi Yan was surprised. "Before the meeting starts, you shouldn't cause any more troubles." Tang Yuannan reluctantly released a long sigh and said, "Help me save face, okay? Regarding the situation related to the sevenfold underworld, have you found out anything?" Shi Yan was startled for a while before asking with his knitting eyebrows. "Let's wait until the meeting to talk about it. It is too soon to tell now." Tang Yuannan's face was complicated. He slightly nodded and continued, "When the meeting is over, you will go with me to the Moon Island. I have some things to tell you in private." Shi Yan nodded, implicating that he already understood. "If there are any problems, tell me." "Understand?" Tang Yuannan hesitated a little bit, then added while knitting his eyebrows, "Actually, you're the joint owner of this island." The faces of Hai and the flock of elders of the corpse's god sect instantly changed and displayed fear after having listened to what Tang Yuannan had just said. Qingming's eyes also became very strange. "Joint owner." Shi Yan also found it funny. "All right, I will be more well-behaved and less troublesome. However, you make me feel bad. I won't care about this joint owner. Anyway, a part of my blood is the Yang family's. It is good that you understand." Tang Yuannan nodded and said nothing more. A beam of light flashed up, and he disappeared into the void again. "How's the relation between you and the three god sect?" Qingming took a deep breath. "As what I have known, the Yang family and the three god sect have always been against each other for hundreds of years. Although the two sides haven't gotten into any big wars for the last 10 years, I have never heard that the Yang family and the three god sect had any sort of connections." Shi Yan coldly harumphed and didn't even bother to reply. From deep inside his heart, he knew that Tang Yuannan wasn't scared of Qingming. That was why Tang Yuannan said that he was a joint owner of the Sun Island. In fact, Tang Yuannan just wanted to entice him. Through the corpse's god sect, Tang Yuannan perhaps wanted to spread out the news regarding the relationship between him and the three god sect, let all of the warriors in the Endless Sea know that besides being a member of the Yang family, Shi Yan was also the spirit inheritor of the three god sect. He had the star martial spirit, so he would possibly step on the Star Island in the future. Thus, becoming the spirit inheritor of the three god sect was also obvious, especially after the Yang family had hidden in the demon area. Their power had dramatically declined, and Yang Tian Emperor had not been in a good situation. Shi also understood that the reason why Tang Yuannan had proactively displayed his good intentions was that the friendly attitude with the demonic Sound clan and the Wings race was also an important factor besides the fact that he possessed the star martial spirits. The unity of the demonic Sound clan and the Wing race wasn't less powerful than that of any other forces. The fact that Tang Yuannan enticed Shi also meant enticing the demonic Sound clan and the Wings race. This guy's plan was really good. The corpse's god sect doesn't have any hostility with you either. A few moments later, Qing Ming suddenly admitted his mistake. If you're interested in these two sky corpses, I can give them to you, considering them my admission of the mistake for the reckless actions at the corpse burial plot number 93. The reason I considered you the corpse refining object that year is because of the trade with the Yin Yang Wonderland. Other than that, we don't have any direct relations with them. What do you think? Yin Hai's group was startled with their eyes and mouths wide opened. Two sky corpses and the resentment between the corpse's god sect and you will be cleared. How about it? Qing Ming said with a low voice. Hierarch. Yin Hai was panicked. These two sky corpses belong to him. Shut up. Qing Ming shouted out loud. Yin Hai mused immediately. Two sky corpses, Shi frowned, contemplated for a while before saying, it's okay that way. But you have to remove all the formation techniques on those sky corpses as well as wiping out the corpse souls that Yin Hai has been retaining. Of course. Qing Ming instantly agreed. Cleaning up the things in these two sky corpses requires some time. 3 days. 3 days later, I will send Yin Hai to bring you these two sky corpses. How is it? Let's do it that way. Shi dragged a half-smile out of the corner of his mouth, clasped his hands conducting the etiquette with Qing Ming. Predecessor Qing Ming is very generous indeed. I have learned a lot for today. See you in the meeting. After finishing, Shi turned around and left. The 3 people of Yi Tianmo's group also followed him, quickly left without leaving any traces. Hierarch. Yin Hai resentfully bowed his head. Why? You don't need to know. The green eyes of Qing Ming suddenly flared up peculiar dots of light that formed a miraculous formation. Inside this small formation, a feeble green flame was flickering and then gradually transformed into a small dark blue face. There is still a heaven flame in his body. A strange consciousness appeared in Qing Ming's head, zooming over his sea of consciousness. There is something exceptional on his body. Otherwise, the other 2 heaven flames would not have submitted. We temporarily shouldn't confront this guy. Let's carefully observe him for a while first. Qing Ming quietly nodded. The green hue in his eyes was gradually dimmer, his pupils regained their brown color as usual. Master, Yi Tianmo slightly turned around, pointed towards above the head, and said with a small voice, the God Realm warrior souls are still watching. Shi raised his head looking up towards the sky then said with a faint smile, no need to care about them. They are very arrogant. Their subordinates were many. They will not show themselves just because of an Earth Realm warrior like me. I think that they will care about me after the meeting is over. Right now, I am not qualified yet. So, are we going back now? Yi Tianmo continued asking. Shi was bewildered, thought for a while, and then said, the 3 of you go back first. I am going to the sacred light mountain. If I go back now, there would probably be some people coming to find me. That's annoying. And if you guys go with me, it will attract other people's eyes. Ha ha ha, I also want to relax a little bit. Will it be dangerous? Kaba worriedly asked. Or Yi Tianmo will go with you. The 2 of us will go back first. No need. Shi shook his head. You guys go back all together. Some warriors on this island are still watching you. In their eyes, I am just a messenger. You have overrated their respect towards me. I know you can always use your souls to transmit messages to me. Thus, if something happens, I can also send a message to you. Although this island is not small, it is not big for you either. It won't take too long for you to fly to me with all of your strength. All right, we'll go first then. Yi Tianmo nodded, bent down to conduct his etiquette before quickly disappearing. Shi went straight to the sacred light mountain. He sometimes met some people on the way. A bunch of young warriors with tidy clothes ahead were gathering into groups of 3 or 5, discussing and smiling continually. They didn't seem to be so worried about the demons' dwellers' invasion. On the contrary, it appeared that they were enjoying the fun and the pleasant atmosphere here. Shuryen had already killed 5 Earth Realm warriors just right after having come here. However, very few people had seen it. Therefore, most of the warriors from different forces everywhere didn't recognize him while he was on his way. They kept laughing and talking with each other, didn't lay their eyes on him. The Sacred Light Mountain was the only mountain on the island. It was tens of thousands of zhang tall, like a sky-supporting pillar piercing up through the sky. The Great Sun Holy Palace of the Sun Island was up on the peak of the Sacred Light Mountain, staying hidden inside the hovering misty clouds, being overwhelmed with the blazing summer sunlight day by day. It was said that this Great Sun Holy Palace had been made of numerous rare mineral stones that could absorb the sunlight and had countless miraculous effects. There were many hot springs at the Sacred Light Mountain. It was said that those hot springs had varieties of mystical effectiveness, which helped women's skin whitening, shiny, and smooth, or helped men be energetic. Soaking in this calm, warm water would make people feel refreshed and revitalized again. At the foot of the Sacred Light Mountain, besides the hot springs, there were also some trading fairs established for exchanging materials, many taverns supplying wine and girls, or typical cultivating rooms exclusively reserved for the warriors. That was why the foot of the Sacred Light Mountain could attract many outstanding youths from everywhere. Many young warriors had followed their great masters here for many different purposes. They gathered in groups, being excited and attached, hoping that they could be lucky enough to find their dream treasures. At a sky-blue bathing place, the warm steam hovered about and covered the hot spring. The bathing area was divided into different separating areas by jasper walls. In the middle of the hot spring area, there was a small ellipse-shaped lake with the size that was as big as a football field. Quite a significant number of warriors were bathing and resting in the lake. A young girl in a thin blouse sunk her slender body into the water of the spring. Because of the rising steam which almost covered the entire water surface, her figure became ambiguous. Even her face couldn't be seen clearly, let alone her prominent body that was hidden under the hot water of the hot spring. Many pavilions were surrounding the bathing place. Some warriors were leaning against the handrails inside those pavilions, attentively looking at the hot spring. Although they couldn't see anything clearly, a bunch of them all wore an excited and eager face. Shuryen walked over to the bathing place and took a quick glance at it. It was indeed impossible to see girls' appearances under this dense, steaming water, let alone to see through the water to watch their mesmerizing bodies. As he emotionlessly walked into one of the pavilions, he heard the sound of a buoyant discussion of some warriors as well as the scent of wine. He immediately realized that this was the only tavern of this bathing place, which specialized in supplying delicious dishes. While beaming out a faint smile, Shuryen felt that his body had loosened a bit and was now relaxed. He stared at that tavern for a while before walking inside. "Miss Gu, try this. This is the crescent moon crab meat which can only be found in the moon island of the Three God sect. The meat is soft with natural flavor. It is very delicious. Miss Chu, try a little bit of this flowing clouds flying streams. It has been said that this wine has been made of the sacred spring inside the Sacred Light Mountain. This sacred wine can mesmerize everyone." 5 or 6 young, good-looking men in tidy and beautiful clothes were smilingly blandishing the 2 women sitting at the table next to the window. The women over there were Gu Linglong and Chu Yanqing. Although Gu Linglong still wore the strange mask, with the exceptional aura spreading out from her body, as well as her appearance which everyone here had all known of, many men had gone mad with her beauty. As soon as Shuryen had stepped in and, even before he could find a seat for himself, he heard those voices coming up and couldn't help but feel ridiculous. He slightly shook his head without saying anything. He found a table near a window and then deliberately looked towards the hot spring where the steam was rising hazily, trying to find a charming figure that was able to attract him. Chapter 306. Good Fortune Came Unexpectedly. Chapter 306. Good Fortune Came Unexpectedly. In front of the window. Shuryen's head leaned against the window frame to observe the blue lake down there. In the immense steam, Beautiful figures ambiguously faded in and out. Many good-looking young warriors with magnificent clothes were also sitting next to the windows like him, talking and laughing, sometimes whistling. They were all very relaxing. Inside the pavilion, numerous guards of the Three Gods sect came and went, bringing many free fruits to the tables that had people sitting. The Sun Island had seldom been open to welcome the outside world. The warriors who were present on the Sun Island this time all followed their great masters of several families or famous sects who were guests of the Three Gods sect. Therefore, the bathing places at the foot of the sacred Light Mountain were opened for free. Even some taverns offered free fruits and food to their guests. Of course, the Three Gods sect would not provide the precious and rare food for free. People should have enough money to pay for it. Shuryen scanned over the precious food menu of the Three Gods sect, but didn't feel very interested in having them. As he felt that the free fruits were enough, he didn't call the guards to order more food after taking a seat. An undetected soul message was transmitted into his head. The messenger was Tianmo. Master, there are indeed many people that have come to greet and talk. Among them are the warriors of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, the Dongfeng family, and the Yin-Yang Wonderland, as well as the people that you have taught them a lesson earlier. Do you want to see them? Although the soul message of Tianmo was sent from 10 miles far away, it remained very clear and didn't fade away in Shuryen's head as if Tianmo was just standing next to him. After thinking for a while, Shuryen responded to Tianmo's soul in his head, "Ignore them. We don't receive anyone." Yes! Tianmo quietly retrieved his soul message first. Shuryen regained his normal state with his lucid eyes. Shuryen exhaled slightly in shock, knitted his eyebrows, looked at the person sitting in front of him, then asked with a low voice, "Who are you?" As he wasn't as good at using the soul as Tianmo, he had to concentrate all of his spirits to communicate with Tianmo, and thus, he couldn't notice any changes happening nearby. After having exchanged messages with Tianmo, he was immediately beware of a young man sitting right next to him. This person wore a 5-colored tunic. His coat was also colorful with the embroidery of all kinds of exotic flowers and birds. Although this person's clothes were weird, he was extremely good-looking. His face was elegantly jade-like, and his eyes were like bright stars. His appearance was even more beautiful than that of a beautiful girl. Under Shuryen's scrutinized look, this person relaxingly laughed while one of his legs put on one of the tables beside them. He deliberately picked up a cluster of grapes and said with a smile, "I am also traveling to the Endless Sea for sightseeing. My name is Yi Zhongfeng. I used to be a member of the Spirit Treasure Wonderland, but have gotten expelled. Now, I don't belong to any forces." While smiling, he raised his left hand, which was even more delicate than that of a pretty girl, to call a guard who was approaching toward them and said, "Bring forth sun flame, bottles here. This kind of wine is unforgettable." Cough. A heavy bag of crystal coins was launched from his palm and exactly fell into the hand of the Three Gods sect's guard. "We both drink and watch beautiful girls at the same time. Ha ha ha, I am very interested in beautiful girls, so we can comfortably discuss with each other." This person didn't show any signs of formalities whatsoever. He took an apple and aggressively bit it, then smilingly pointed towards Gu Linglong and Chu Yanqing, lowered his voice and said, "Those 2 girls over there are real precious food. One of them is the daughter of the Gu family, the other is the holy maiden of the Heaven Lake Divine Land. They not only have exceptional appearances, but are also the outstanding warriors on the power rankings. Especially the holy maiden of the Heaven Lake Divine Lawn. The face behind that mask will surely make people long for it day and night." Yi Zhongfeng's face seemed to be very excited. He flicked his tongue with half-closed eyes and revealed a big grin. While he was talking, a guard of the Three Gods sect had already brought 4 bottles of the sun flame and some snacks. He lazily stood up, grabbed a bottle of the sun flame, threw his head back guzzling a few gulps of wine, then wiped his mouth and complimented, "This wine is amazing." Shuryen leaned his back against the chair, slightly squinted, coldly looking at Yi Zhongfeng without saying anything. "Do you want to try a sip?" Yi Zhongfeng spoke up, put a bottle of the sun flame in front of Shi Yan and seriously said, "Only the Three Gods sect has this wine. It has been made by a sun god. You will feel that your tummy is in flames after drinking it. It is both subtle and hot, absolutely a good wine for a man." Shi Yan contemplated and didn't say a word. He took the sun flame bottle, held his face up drinking almost half of the bottle in one breath. He then frigidly looked at Yi Zhongfeng and said, "Spit it out." "Why are you looking for me?" Yi Zhongfeng's face stiffened. He rubbed his cheek and said with an embarrassed smile, "You realized it. You have the Purgatory True Flame, which ranks number 4 on the Heaven Flames list. Moreover, you have also fused with that Purgatory True Flame. Your understanding of the Heaven Flames is not less than that of the Corpses God Sect's hierarch Qingming. You also know about his superb Adjoin Corpses Flame while you are just in the Earth Realm. You have probably met Qingming earlier." Shi Yan coldly said. "Heaven Flames can sense and detect each other. As you are sitting in front of me, I can apparently sense the Heaven Flames aura on your body. I just want to know what you are going to do after all. Heaven Flames can absorb and support each other. If one Heaven Flame consumes another one, it will bring that Heaven Flame itself and its owner a marvelous benefit." A half-hour ago, Shi Yan and the Corpses God Sect had confronted. He also knew that Qingming had the greed for his Heaven Flame. If the three people of Yi Tianmo's group hadn't been there, or Tang Yuannan hadn't appeared to warn Qingming, Qingming would have recklessly found all the ways to absorb his Heaven Flame. If Qingming had absorbed the 10,000-year Earth Flame, his God realm would have entered a new level, and his strength then could frighten everyone. As Yi Zhongfeng possessed the Purgatory True Flame, Shi Yan had to be very careful with him. The Purgatory True Flame originates from the Purgatory, which is the origination of the Purgatory Flame that ranks number 4 among the Heaven Flames. The Purgatory True Flame can melt down all mineral metals. Therefore, the Purgatory True Flame can not only prevent the enemies, but also refine medicinal pills and secret treasures. The person who possesses the Purgatory True Flame can also become an alchemist or a blacksmith. In terms of the achievements in these two fields, ordinary people are completely on the losing ground. The ice-cold flame sent out a message from the blood vein ring to help Shi Yan understand a little bit more about the attributes of the Purgatory True Flame. "Don't misunderstand." Yi Zhongfeng laughed while raising his hand, implicating that he didn't have any wicked intentions. As he didn't see Shi Yan having any abnormal actions, he then regained his previous deliberate manner, laughed and said, "I meet you here unexpectedly. I have come to this tavern to drink and then realized that you have the Heaven Flames aura. Hence, I walked over here." "That's good." Shi Yan nodded with calm eyes. He sedately ate fruits and drank the good wine of Yi Zhongfeng, relaxingly watching the hot water lake, ignoring the other person. In fact, Yi Zhongfeng wanted to say something, but then stopped. Shi Yan didn't look at him, pretending not to hear it, and continued watching the lake down there. "I want to make a trade with you. I don't know what kind of your Heaven Flame is, but I think that you can help me successfully refine some sacred-level secret treasures." Yi Zhongfeng said with flaming bad ambitions and burning eyes, "Although I have the Purgatory True Flame, my cultivation base is too low, which prevents me from being able to make use all of the Purgatory True Flame's forces. Meanwhile, refining sacred-level secret treasures requires a persistent heating flame for a long time. That is why I couldn't do it. Not interested." Shi Yan didn't turn his head and directly refused him. "You are not taking this chance to deprive him of the Purgatory True Flame that resides in his body?" The ice-cold flame sent out a message. "Although this little rascal's cultivation base is the same as yours, killing him is not a difficult task with your true ability. After he is dead, you can absorb the Purgatory True Flame. What do you think?" "He only has the Earth Realm cultivation base, but he could fuse it with his own body. Do you think that he is that easy to deal with?" Shi Yan beamed out a faint smile. "As what I have known, it seems that only the true God warriors are qualified enough to fuse the Heaven Flames with their bodies. When I've met Qingming, I could feel that his fusion was even less than that of this little rascal. I don't think we should recklessly do anything." "Makes sense. This person is indeed a little peculiar." The ice-cold flame agreed with Shi Yan. "Honestly, I am more interested in Qingming's Heaven Flame." Aren't you crazy? Qingming is a God realm warrior. His superb Adjoin corpse's flame is very anomalous. Although his fusion with the superb Adjoin corpse's flame is not as good as that of this little rascal, his realm is very high, which allows him to make great use of the superb Adjoin corpse's flame's powers. Have you gone mad? Probably. If I am interested in Qingming, so are other people. We will see how the situation goes and find the right time to take action. When the ice-cold flame and he were secretly communicating, Yi Zhongfeng worriedly rubbed his face. After a long while, Yi Zhongfeng suddenly clenched his teeth and hatefully said, "If you can help me, the sacred level secret treasure will be yours if it can be successfully refined." Shi Yan's eyes brightened up. He turned his head around looking at Yi Zhongfeng as if he was a stupid person. "Are you insane?" "Going to be." Yi Zhongfeng laughed strangely. "You also know the value of a sacred level secret treasure. In the Endless Sea, each sacred level secret treasure is the thing to guard the sect. I am willing to give it to you because I want you to help me. So, what will you get after that?" Shi Yan was startled, unable to understand. "My cultivating technique is a little bit specific. Breaking through the realm is carried out through the secret treasure refinement. If I am successful in refining a sacred level secret treasure, I can break through directly to the Nirvana realm from the Earth realm, even possibly enter the spirit realm." Yi Zhongfeng thought a little bit before speaking with his heating eyes. Shi Yan's body was agitated. He said with a low voice, "It seems you also get many good things. If I don't have anything in return, why I have to give you that much?" Yi Zhongfeng forced a smile and continued, "If I want to refine a secret treasure, I have to find a person with the heaven flame and ask for his help. This thing, although I know that the corpse's god sect's hierarch Qingming has the heaven flame, I don't dare to cooperate with him. As you have known, the heaven flames can devour each other, my cultivation base is much less than his, and I have also lost the support from the spirit treasure wonderland. Hence, I don't dare to." Shi Yan kept silent, knitted his eyebrows, carefully considering the pros and cons. He couldn't help but have a feeling that a cake had just fallen from the heaven. After using his heaven flame to help that guy, he could obtain a sacred level secret treasure. Wasn't it similar to find a fortune out of expectation? "Little rascal, are you sure about that?" After contemplating for a while, Shi Yan suddenly remembered this matter, then asked, "Don't tell me that you are not sure and just want to take me as an experimental test subject. And then, everything comes to nothing at the end. I warn you, I am very busy, I don't have too much time to make a joke with you." "No worries, I have tried it many times before." Yi Zhongfeng arrogantly laughed and confidently said, "If you agree to help me, I assure that you will have a sacred level secret treasure. Believe me." "All right. I trust you this time." Shi Yan dragged a half-smile out of the corner of his mouth, then said, "I agree." "That's good. Let's talk about details." Yi Zhongfeng took one step forward and lowered his voice. "I have prepared enough materials, just lack one typical material, which is the particular profound level secret treasure. It is." Clacking, clacking. Right at this time, many hasty footsteps reverberated from the stairs. A gentle-to-bone voice came up, "Yi Zhongfeng, come out." Yi Zhongfeng was dumbstruck with an embarrassed face, quickly turned his back toward the door, pretending like he was attentively watching the hot water lake. His outstandingly handsome face was suddenly distorted, his bones changed, his facial skin was pulled together. Just in 3 breaths, his face had changed from the appearance of a white-faced young man to a dry yellow face with gloomy eyes. Even the angel-like attraction had also disappeared. Wandering in this world, one always needs some self-protection tricks. Hehe. Yi Zhongfeng relaxed his body, swinging his legs, and continued drinking wine without being worried at all. Chapter 307. Dare to come here and play with me in the water? Chapter 307. Dare to come here and play with me in the water. Not long after that, a beautiful girl with a petite body in blue clothes stepped up from the stairs. Although this girl had a pretty yet dainty body, her full breasts were extraordinarily big, stodgy, and dominantly heaved. They were quite bigger than those of other beautiful girls that Shi Yan had ever met. Her skin was of a jade-like white hue and as splendid as lights radiating from a gem. As soon as this girl stepped up, all the men in the tavern were startled, watching her without blinking. She had a pure and perfectly pretty face. Her moves were extremely adorable and agile. Together with her stodgy firm breasts, everything had made a blow-minding appeal of this girl. Even Shi Yan's eyes brightened, staring at that girl, secretly complimenting her. Yi Zhongfeng turned his back to that girl and winked at Shi Yan, implicating that he shouldn't draw that girl's attention, which might bring him some troubles. Shi Yan chuckled, knitted his eyebrows, took the bottle of wine, held his head back, and drank some sips. He then shook his head and said, "Such a regret." Yi Zhongfeng was bewildered, moved closer, and asked, "What regret?" "Such a delicious fresh cabbage like that is tormented by scum like you." Shi Yan coldly harumphed, then said with a low voice, "Why is she looking for you?" "Nothing." Yi Zhongfeng forced a smile. That girl stepped into the room, tweaked her back several times. Her almond-shaped eyes on the ferocious face started to scan from the last tables to the other side without letting any warriors escape from her sight. The warriors from different seas all revealed a big smile, lifted up their heads and straightened their backs, trying to show that they were extraordinarily eminent. The girl faintly smiled with disrelish on her face. After glimpsing all the people here and being unable to find the person she wanted, she hastily turned around and left. "Little Mei, you come sit here and have some drinks with me." A guy at the second sky of the disaster realm lustfully smiled while looking at that girl and then proactively walked closer to her. "You want to die?" Yi Zhongfeng suddenly lowered his head, slightly breathing. He reluctantly shook his head and released a sigh as if he was whining for the other's fate. Shi Yan was astonished, but then he immediately understood why Yi Zhongfeng had sighed. That pretty girl with ample bosom gently took actions, pulling that guy, grabbing his waist and throwing him away. This disturbing disaster realm warrior flew straight out of the window. While he was still in the air, his head exploded, blood spattered everywhere. He was dead even before falling in the lake. Boom. That girl's snow-white hand was gently placed on the table, a tremendous aura massively transmitted to that table. In an instant, that wooden table broke into 4 or 5 pieces, each of which shot out like a dazzling sharp sword, dashing straight to the 3 disaster realm warriors who were lustfully smiling on their chairs. A scream like a stuck pig resounded and then ceased instantly. The girl took out a silk handkerchief and wiped away some drops of wine on her hand. She didn't care about those 3 bodies beside her and continued to walk forward to search instead. With her ferocious eyes, she carefully looked at every single person. The whole tavern was deadly silent without any sound. The previous boisterous noise seemed to disappear. The lustful eyes now became frightened. At this time, the tavern was so quiet that even the sound of a falling needle could also be heard. All eyes were on that girl. Shi Yan was not an exception either. For mild flows of bloody aura from the lake and the broken table flew towards Shi Yan. Shi Yan's spirit was very comfortable, like being fed when hungry. He had killed 5 Earth Realm warriors and obtained 5 flows of aura today. Now, he got another 4 streams of the 4 Disaster Realm warriors' aura. He was very satisfied with this achievement and thus was more interested in crowded places. The more people they have, the easier that conflicts could happen, which benefited his miraculous martial spirits more. That girl goggled her eyes, freely going back and forth in the tavern, which was now as quiet as a mouse. Although her eyes displayed impatience, she still maintained a gentle voice. "Yi Zhongfeng, even if you are dead, you have to come out now. Master needs to see you." Shi Yan saw Yi Zhongfeng continue eating without looking at that girl. However, his face was stiff, which didn't match with his deliberate manner. "Master has said that if you don't go back in 1 hour, he will kill your demon beast mount." That girl was both searching and gently intimidating at the same time. "If you don't go back in 2 hours, Master will destroy the perishing spirit formation's mouth that you have created. And if you still don't show up, he would smash the divine incense tripod." Yi Zhongfeng was still busy with eating while forcing a miserable smile on his face as if someone had controlled his fate. He released a sigh and dolefully said, "Jia, give me the spiritual stones." The girl's eyes were brightened while revealing a smile. Her eyes were half closed, forming a new moon shape, which was very adorable. That's good. Master just wants good things for you. You should honestly tell the truth and then obediently go back. He will not make it hard on you. After speaking, the girl walked over and stood in front of Shiryen, hauled out a triangle-shaped silver stone, and gave it to Yi Zhongfeng. After that, she pushed Yi Zhongfeng to the other seat and then sat down on the chair that he had just left. Clatter. The bottle of wine fell on the ground. The girl eyed Shiryen curiously and said, "This bastard Yi Zhongfeng is a troublemaker. You shouldn't get involved with him. No matter what he suggests, you better not to agree. Otherwise, the one who suffers loss is you." Shiryan's face became peculiar. Korf, korf, korf. Yi Zhongfeng constantly coughed. His face turned red. He cruelly goggled at her and scolded, "Lin Yiqi, can you not cause me any more troubles? I am only speaking the truth." The girl lifted her face up and contemptuously said, "Shiryen!" A light shout suddenly arose from the table ahead. Gu Linglong stood up, biting her lips and clenching her teeth. Her face was full of resentment, and her eyes were flooded with hatred. It looked like she was about to risk her life. Chu Yanqing was stunned as she hadn't expected that she would see Shiryen here. However, the hesitance appeared in her eyes, just like she was quietly considering something. She didn't stand up like Gu Linglong. It seemed she was afraid of something. Shiryen knitted his eyebrows, looking at that direction. He then poured a cup of wine for himself, raised it towards Gu Linglong, and said with a smile, "Very glad to meet you here." "I am not happy at all." Gu Linglong's face was overwhelmed with anger. "You, a dirty and scrupulous bastard like you, also come to the Sun Island. Aren't you afraid that people here will devour you?" Shiryen shrugged and said, "Isn't it that I am still fine now?" Gu Linglong gnashed her teeth and was about to say something, but then 4 Earth Realm warriors sitting beside her suddenly stood up, rushing towards Shiryen with unfriendly manners. Those 4 were all at the first or second sky of Earth Realm with arrogant gestures and notable appearances. As they saw Gu Linglong being angry, they wanted to show off their abilities a little bit to win her heart. The guy leading wore a hat and white martial attire. Before taking actions, he gently asked Lin Yiqi, "Does this man have any relations to you?" Lin Yiqi shook her head, "I don't know him." Yi Zhongfeng faintly smiled, lazily leaned backward, didn't seem to help Shiryen out willingly. He waved his hand and said, "If you want to fight, get a little bit further away from me. If you don't touch me, I will not get angry." Linglong, Chu Yanqing stood up eventually, staring at Gu Linglong, then said with a low voice, "Do you intend to let them die?" "Flies that buzz around annoys me. They deserve to die." Gu Linglong coldly replied. Reluctantly, Chu Yanqing seriously said, "Han Feng, you shouldn't make a mess here. You guys are not his opponents. Moreover, our hatred is not your business." The guy leading's face looked a little strange after hearing this. He turned his head around, glancing at Chu Yanqing, and said, "Miss Chu, you have underestimated us too much." "I don't underestimate you." Chu Yanqing continued. "You guys are not his opponents. Even if you guys attack all together, death is the only way that awaits you guys." The warriors in the tavern were all astonished after hearing this. Even Lin Yiqi was dazzled, knitted her eyebrows, pulled Yi Zhongfeng's blouse, and asked, "Little Bai, is this friend of yours dangerous?" Yi Zhongfeng shook his head and said while chuckling, "I don't know." Shiryen was drinking wine alone, didn't care about the 4 warriors who were provoking him. He only indifferently looked at Lin Yiqi and Yi Zhongfeng in front of him and then shifted his eyes toward the lake through the window. After hearing Chu Yanqing's advice, the faces of those 4 warriors, who wanted to win a beauty's heart, got darkened. They stood behind Shiryen's back hesitantly, considering if they should hazardously take actions. Shiryen was still acting normal, concentrating on the hot water lake, looking toward a mermaid inside the lake. At the southwest corner of the densely steamy lake, a charming figure was swimming like a mermaid. This woman was regularly coming up and down out of the water. That beautiful figure was ambiguously flashing on and off inside the steam. Other people certainly couldn't see it clearly, so they would feel so unpleasantly curious that made them want to come closer to have a better look to see how beautiful that figure was. In the turquoise water, that woman sometimes looked toward Shiryen and smiled as if she was proudly displaying her appealing body. Beside her, there were about 10 warriors from different forces in the endless sea. They were all passionately watching her with enjoyable eyes, but didn't dare to come closer. In the tavern, some warriors were also looking towards her with astonished eyes which glued on the girl's mesmerizing body that could drive others crazy. Many of them whistled and resented not being able to jump into the water, coming closer to admire her beauty. "Do you dare come here and play with me in the water?" Under the scrutinized looks of numerous warriors, that woman raised her snow-white arm, pointing towards Shiryen while provokingly smiling. "Shiryen, if you have the gut to come down here, I will agree to let you bathe next to me." Chapter 308, Eyes of Love. Chapter 308, Eyes of Love. "Do you dare to come down here?" In the large bathing area, many moving lights were surrounding Chao Zhilan. Her mesmerizing face gradually appeared clearer. The misty steam hovered around her body like a real living creature dancing, following her gentle movements. It gave people a feeling that a long white eel was moderately and slenderly mincing around her. Standing in the lake, Chao Zhilan consistently revealed a big smile on her beautiful face. In front of other people, she didn't seem to be scared nor shy. Her small jade-like finger pointed towards Shiryen from a distance while her breath was provokingly rambling. Everyone clamored. No matter if it was either male or female warriors in this bathing area, or the outstanding youths surrounding, or those who recognized her or not, everyone was startled. Following the direction that Chao Zhilan's jade-like finger was pointing, everyone nervously searched for the target and eventually found Shiryen by the window. Under countless attentive looks, Shiryan's face remained normal as if he didn't know that he had become their target. He continued drinking alone without paying any attentions to Chao Zhilan's words. He didn't show any abnormal changes and maintained his indifferent manner. Lin Yiqi and Yi Zhongfeng beside him were also bewildered, looking at him with strange faces. After having heard Chao Zhilan's words, more than 10 young warriors in the tavern surprisingly looked at him with the eyes full of horror, admirability, envy, discontentment, suspicion, etc. While many thoughts were spinning in their heads, they were quietly speculating Shiryan's identity. The 4 young warriors, who had had the intention of disturbance, were in a daze behind Shiryen like wooden cocks, standing like a post without any reactions. Gu Linglong secretly gritted her teeth, felt angry and hateful at the same time while quietly cursing Chao Zhilan. Xu Yanqing slowly sat down, bowed her head without uttering a word. Nobody knew what she was thinking. "Is the daughter of the Chao family calling you?" Yi Zhongfeng was startled for a while, then shuddered and said with a strange face, "Brother, who are you after all?" "I know this Chao Zhilan. This woman is famous for her beauty in the endless sea. Numerous people have gone mad because of her. I have never heard that she has ever laid her eyes on anyone. But you could do it, even make her take the initiative. How did you do it?" Shiryen shook his head with a cold face. "She is mentally ill." Lin Yiqi chuckled, constantly nodding. "She got a mental disorder indeed. She can shamelessly do something like this in front of so many people. I genuinely admired this woman. Aren't you coming down?" Yi Zhongfeng said, "For countless people in the endless sea, that woman is the dreaming precious treasure. She has proactively been asking for you. What are you waiting for?" Numerous eyes were fixed on Shiryen, and everyone with different expressions seemed to wait for something to happen. Chao Zhilan gently smiled like a cherry blossom budding, which was incredibly beautiful. Her curves were covered by many rays of light, her hair was soft and shiny, her full lips were red and appealing. She raised her voice and continued, "Shiryen, why are you scared of me? You are afraid that I will devour you." In the tavern, a woman with waist-length hair was startled, covering her mouth, unbelievably looking at Shiryen. Clink. The tray in her hands fell to the ground, green fruits scattered, rolling everywhere. "Linda, The other woman next to her quietly shouted, "Stop being dazed." Linda covered her mouth with astonishment. She just stood there, bewilderedly looking at Shiryen from a distance, didn't seem to hear the voice of the person beside her. "Lanjie, what are you doing?" A loud shout suddenly came up from the left of Shiryen. A 2-meter-tall man with an extremely sturdy body and a ferocious red face was staring at Shiryen. He wore a rustic animal leather cloth that was wrapping around his body, exposing a tanned skin with dense scars. The exposure of firm muscles indicated an endlessly mighty strength. "Man Gu, don't poke your nose into my business." Chao Zilan still kept her mesmerizing smile on her face while her eyes were silently looking toward Shiryen. She continued provoking Shiryen. "Shiryen, you don't have the guts to do it. The daughter of the Chao family is insane. She has gone mad indeed. After all, is that her? I have heard that she has never had any feelings for any man. How's this possible then? It is certainly her. Otherwise, how come Mangu of the uncultivated barbarian sect have gotten angry like that?" Near the lake, in the tavern, the clamor was rising. The majority of the warriors were gathering in groups of 5 or 7 and boisterously discussing together. In just a short time, Shiryen had unexpectedly become the interest of everyone. All of them were guessing his identity, wanted to know the relationship between him and Chao Zilan. At the trading area from a distance, there was a person with a black veil covering the face. As that person heard the clamor at the bathing area, that one couldn't help but walk over, stood on the road of the trading area, looking towards this place. After glimpsing quickly, that person suddenly shuddered. The eyes with mixed and confused emotions looked at Shiryen without blinking. It seemed that Shiryen also felt something. He suddenly turned around looking towards that person. For eyes met. There were as if a lightning flashing up, and countless feelings had been transmitted through this lightning. Those who were looking at Shiryen all realized that Shiryen's eyes had changed. They subconsciously shifted their eyes toward the direction of his look, but everything they could see was a pair of beautiful, bright, deep eyes. After suddenly turned his head back again, under many scrutinized looks, Shiryen dragged a half-smile out of the corner of his mouth, then said, "It is not that I don't dare to come down. I am grateful with your intention. Regretfully, I have been taken. If you want to become my favorite, you have to try harder. And first, it needs to be accepted by her." Shiryen pointed towards the person in the black veil. Under the attentive looks of other people, that woman removed her black veil, exposing an exceptionally bewitching beauty. She gently and slenderly leaped up, slowly took step by step towards Shiryen. She was like a peri sent from heaven with beautifully elegant manners. In the steamy weather, she deliberately walked through the window in front of Shiryen, then descended and stood next to him. Everyone clamored again. "Xia Xinyan of the Kiara Sea. That is her indeed. The reincarnation martial spirit is unimaginably miraculous. Finally, we have witnessed it today. Who is that little rascal? Why are the 2 most beautiful flowers of the endless sea following him? Shiryen, have you heard about this name? Only devil knows. Damn it. I don't understand anything. How come Miss Chao, the one I have highly admired, could recklessly act like this just because of this bastard?" Most of the young warriors showed their sadness and disappointment. They angrily clenched their teeth, staring at Shiryen, resenting not to be able to devour him. Many girls, on the contrary, displayed their excitement. Their eyes were flooded with curious beams, interestingly looking at Shiryen, wanting to know what kind of mystical attraction that Shiryen had which made him able to draw the admirability of the 2 beautiful women, Chao Zilan and Xia Xinyan. Instantly, inside the bathing area, as well as the outside, people boisterously discussed what was happening. "When have you arrived?" Shiryen gently asked. Sitting down next to Shiryen, without looking at Chao Zilan's angry face in the lake, Xia Xinyan revealed a smile. "I've just arrived this morning. The 3 God sect has invited us. My grandfather is coming here with me as well. Tang Yuanan is very thoughtful." Shiryen nodded. He stretched out his hand holding her jade-like hand, but she resentfully pushed it away. She also gave him a black look. "This is wrong. You dare to upset Chao Jie. I will beat you to death." A roar resounded. Mangu of the uncultivated barbarian sect with the ferocious, sturdy body like the one of a tiger or a panther suddenly dashed towards Shiryen. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. An ear-splitting sound came up in the air. As soon as Mangu leaped up into the air, a tremendous power spread out from his body. Shiryen knitted his eyebrows. His eyes turned to be frigid. Slosh, slosh, slosh. Water shot up from the bathing area below Mangu. The pellucid water pillars rocketed and then flew straight toward him. Get lost! Mangu shouted. The sound wave, which was like tens of thousands of swords, directly struck those splendid water pillars that were massively approaching. The sword lights slashed those water pillars which were like stone cylinders, breaking them into plenty of water drops that splattered everywhere in the air. Mangu stomped on a huge water drop and then brutally dashed towards Shiryen. Lightning flashed up. A big black club suddenly emerged in Mangu's hand. Thunder resounded. Countless sharp rays of light radiated from the big, pure, spectacular club, dragging along the incomparable their aura. They darted towards Shiryan's chest altogether just in a blink. Watch out! Yi Zhongfeng quietly shouted but remained at his spot, except for frowning a little. Lin Yuqi showed her excitement. Her face was glowing red, but her voice was still very gentle. That freak has the innate god strength. It has been said that he's killed a Nirvana realm warrior just by one strike. We can witness his danger today. Ha ha ha, he is putting all of the hatred into his actions this time. We are going to see an interesting play. The energetic seals, which were created by the convergence of lights, emerged in Shiryan's palms. Layer after layer of these seals heaped up into one which was then impetuously shot out of his palm. The life seal. 7 seals merged into one which was as heavy as a mountain. Its god lights were immense. Its power could crush mountains and the ground into dust. Boom. An earth-shaking sound suddenly reverberated from the bathing area. In that ear-piercing explosion, the paving blue stones of the lake scattered here and there. A tavern next to the hot water lake collapsed instantly. Big stone blocks massively fell, making many warriors run away while holding their heads and cursing loudly. Mangu's body in the air continued shaking. The big club slipped out of his hand, falling and directly striking a tavern which then collapsed shortly. Shiryan's hand got numb, his veins almost exploded, and his face was glowing red. He had to take 3 steps backward to be able to stabilize himself. Dangerous. Shiryan's heart shuddered. His face suddenly became cold like ice, his eyes shot out unlimited combating will. He leaped up and plunged down toward Mangu in the lake like a falcon seizing its prey. Continue. Mangu was standing in the lake. As seeing Shiryen plunging down, he suddenly laughed terrifyingly. The bones in his body crackled, producing constant explosive sounds. Mangu's tremendous aura impetuously came out, following the cracking sounds of the bones. Chapter 309. Aggressively Fighting. Chapter 309. Aggressively Fighting. Boop. Mangu's clothes were entirely torn down. The sheets of animal skins on his body turned into pieces, scattering all over the sky. A flow of wild, delirious, tremendous power suddenly projected from Mangu's body. The green veins on Mangu's body looked like as if they were interweaving together, which were similar to some black streaks moving along in different directions on his body. It also looked like a blind painter with a paintbrush in his hand drawing bold lines, creating some formation. In just a few seconds, the vessel's positions inside Mangu's entire body had changed. After the green veins had emerged, they then transformed into a kind of pattern, which resembled a tattoo binding around his body. This tattoo was both arrogant and mighty like a green-horned savage buffalo. The green-horned savage buffalo that surfaced on his skin brought people a feeling that his strength had tremendously been reinforced and was about to shoot out. The power of the barbarian god veins. In the tavern, many warriors suddenly screamed out in shock. The power of the barbarian god veins was the scared-level martial technique of the uncultivated barbarian sect, which definitely shouldn't be underestimated. It was said that Mangu was an anomalous innate genius. His vessels were naturally more exceptionally sturdy than ordinary people. When he used the power of the barbarian god veins, his vessels pounded as if there was some kind of the barbarian power continuously spreading out non-stop from his bones and vessels. Mangu is known as the person with the god power that is ranked the first among the young generation in the Endless Sea. It isn't necessary for him to use any secret treasure. Mangu only needs to rely on his god power of his own. Not to mention the warriors at the same realm, the Nirvana Realm warriors are unlikely to resist him. That's right. It has been said that Mangu used to launch a strike that made a Nirvana Realm warrior explode and die. If a Nirvana Realm warrior wants to defeat him, he must use the support of his Sea of Consciousness and activate the oppressive soul to waste the profound chi in Mangu's body. That is how he can defeat Mangu, hopefully. That little rascal is screwed now. He dares to fight one-on-one with Mangu. He doesn't care about being dead or alive. A crowd of warriors screamed out in astonishment, didn't hold back, but discussed the miraculous martial technique of the uncultivated barbarian sect. Many people were standing and watching beside the bathing area. Mangu's veins, which were prominently bulging, had created the green-horned savage buffalo tattoos. His bones crackled like the sound of the explosive fireworks. Horrendous aura gradually came up. Launch! A shout bringing along the power that was as strong as the landslide of an ice mountain reverberated from the bathing area, creating a huge wave. Mangu's 2-meter-tall body solemnly stood in the lake like a barbarian god, creating many 10-meter-tall waves. The aura around him was indescribably tremendous. In the air, an imposing figure plunged down right in front of Mangu as fast as the lightning. This person didn't choose to take actions from the air. Come here. Mangu's face displayed great arrogance. His chest muscles were like a chunk of cold steel. His hands constantly pounded on his chest as if he was insane. Shuryen knitted his eyebrows. His face was as cold as black ice. He gently took a deep breath. Suddenly, in front of many people's eyes, his mighty body gradually shriveled and turned to be scraggy. As soon as his body was bone dry, a flow of horrendous aura that dragged along different emotions of violence, despair, disgust, and murder suddenly rose up and blended with the steam in the bathing area, creating some kind of a peculiar white substance that was covering his entire body. When watching, other people would have the feeling that Shuryen's body was covered with a splendid silver armor that was full of evil aura. His body's transformation was different from Mangu's. After Mangu had become crazy, his body expanded, becoming bigger and more audacious. Shuryen, on the contrary, became mute. His imposing body had shriveled and dried up. The spiritual aura surged up, bringing the extremely ferocious forces which could freeze other people's hearts. Never before has a single warrior in the same realm dared to carry out a full frontal assault against me. Mangu excitedly licked his lips as if he was a ferocious, bloodthirsty beast. You are dangerous, though. You haven't got injured after receiving one full power strike of mine. No wonder why you are so ambitious like this. Shuryen's eyes were as cold as an icy saber. He dragged a faint smile out of the corner of his mouth. Let's continue. Mangu roared, violently stomped on the ground. The blue stones on the bottom of the lake were broken into pieces under his trample. Countless horrendous forces emitted from his feet. With Mangu as the center, in the range of 50 meters, the blue stone bottom of the lake was smashed into small pieces under his aggressive feet as if it was pounded by hundreds of big clubs. Mangu was still standing there motionlessly. The blue stones in the 50-meter range surrounding had crumbled and scattered here and there. The bluestone rubble which dragged along the turquoise water had created numerous water arrows that flew up in the air altogether. While these water arrows were still flying in the air, Mangu suddenly took actions. Like a vast mountain that could walk, Mangu mopped up towards Shuryen. The ground was shaken wherever he had passed by. Inside the bathing area, the rumble reverberated nonstop. Tens of thousands of tons of water, which were conducted by an unknown force, condensed and converged to Mangu's body. The water of the lake became viscous and then turned to be more solid, constantly plastered on Mangu's body. His body seemed to be presently bigger. Before arriving at Shuryen's place, these thousands of tons of water had made him much stronger. Like a giant in the ancient times, Man-gu launched his iron fist, which brought along numerous spectacularly splendid water drops. Inside of each of these water drops contained a force that was violent enough to crush an ordinary Earth Realm warrior's flesh and bones. Very strong. This Man-gu has the terrifying god power indeed. This tremendous force is created by the condensation and refinement of his body and the profound qi. Those tons of water not only are adhered altogether, but also contain the power that can make an earth-shaking explosion. This Man-gu deserves to be the once-in-a-thousand-year genius of the uncultivated barbarian sect. That guy hides the terrifying forces inside those water drops which can explode at any given time. He uses the flabbiness of the water drops to neutralize the rapidity of the forces, preventing them from instantly exploding. This Man-gu is absolutely not a blunt guy. Being able to do this has proved that he is not an idiot. That's right. This Man-gu is very dangerous. No wonder he wasn't defeated when fighting with a Nirvana warrior. He does have some potential. Everyone opened their eyes widely, bewilderedly watching the scene in the lake. Their faces displayed an unimaginable sense of astonishment. Many of people who were bathing in the lake had to run away without caring if they were wet or not. They hurriedly climbed to the terraces of the taverns and then watched the battle from there. The second combat capability in the power rankings deserves the praise from everyone. Yi Zhongfeng was standing next to the window, quietly nodding his head. He then glanced at Lin Yiqi and said with a big smile, "Jia, if you confront Man-gu without using any secret treasure, just only rely on your physical strength to fight, what do you think about the possibility of winning?" Xia Xinyan's beautiful eyes brightened, surprisingly looked at the girl beside her. She didn't know the relation between Shi Yan and these two persons. As she had seen them sit at the same table with Shi Yan, she had assumed that Shi Yan and Yi Zhongfeng, Lin Yiqi, were friends. Therefore, she had secretly paid attention to them since she had entered this tavern. Both Yi Zhongfeng and Lin Yiqi had brought her a strange feeling. She could vaguely feel that they were emitting some kind of aura that could make other people's hearts vigorously pound. She felt that Yi Zhongfeng and Lin Yiqi were exceptionally outstanding, and their cultivation base wasn't low at all. Right now, as she heard Yi Zhongfeng's question, she was startled inside and extremely astonished. Man-gu was the high-class warrior who was ranked number 2 in the power rankings of the Endless Sea. It was said that nobody had the barbarian power that was as strong as his. Although Yi Zhongfeng had witnessed the danger of Man-gu, he still raised that question. Would he perhaps feel that this beautiful girl was even mightier than Man-gu? The winning possibility is only 5-5. Lin Yiqi knitted her eyebrows, seriously thought for a while before speaking. If merely relying on the physical strength to fight, it can only be a draw. But if it were a mortal combat, the dead one would be him. The girl said with a confident face. Xia Xinyan was surprised. Her beautiful eyes flared up suspiciously as she didn't know if Lin Yiqi was telling the truth or not. Yi Zhongfeng unexpectedly nodded as if it was obvious. If it is mortal combat, the dead one will no doubt be that guy Man-gu. I have no second thoughts about this. But I also believe that if you take the risk, using only brute physical strength, your possibility to win is still higher. Lin Yiqi lifted her face up and angrily said, "It is obvious." The astonishment was getting bigger in Xia Xinyan's eyes. Boom. Right at this moment, at the bathing area, a vortex appeared and swept along the water drops from the lake. This vortex sucked all of those water drops which contained the tremendous forces. Each water drop falling into the vortex had released an earth-shaking explosion. The water in the lake splattered everywhere. None of the water drops that contained violent forces, which had been condensed by Man-gu, could touch Shi Yan's body because it was attracted by that vortex and was then dissolved. While Man-gu was frothily snarling at the lake below him, Shi Yan was lingeringly levitating just above the eye of the impending vortex when he abruptly leaped up and surfed the waves. The devilish misty smoke condensed on his body. He now looked like a dragon leaping out of the sea, dashing straight toward Man-gu. Each of those two men condensed and created a huge water pillar, putting all of their forces into their own water pillars. The aura emitted from these water pillars was so powerful as if it could crush mountains and the ground into pieces. These two water pillars then fiercely collided with each other. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The collision of these two colossal water pillars darted out many water arrows here and there. Each of the water arrows contained a terrifying power that frightened people out of their wits. These arrows, which were like the thick water curtains, shot out everywhere. Many ear-splitting noises resounded. 12 imposing taverns unexpectedly suffered an extremely destructive power all of a sudden. In just an instant, 5 of them were pierced through by the water arrows and collapsed. The remaining 7 were shaking uncontrollably and were on the verge of collapsing. Luckily, a flock of warriors from the taverns united their forces in preventing them from perilously plunging down. However, the fight between Shuryen and Man-gu was still raging on. Chapter 310. Violent Attacks. Chapter 310. Violent Attacks. Numerous waves of energy spread out from the 2 water pillars. After having radiated dazzling lights and shot out thousands of water arrows, they collapsed quickly. At this time, Shuryen and Man-gu were standing, facing each other on the surface of the water. Their powerful punches collided, creating a shaking explosion like a terrible roll of thunder. Many beams of light that could dazzle and dizzy other people instantly covered both of them, making their figure ambiguous. In just a few seconds, it was unknown for how many times they had launched their strikes. Boom. The waves tumbled. Their bodies were like long lances that plunged at a mind-blowing speed to the bathing area, creating a huge crater in the middle of the lake. Water flows crazily flooding in the crater was struck straight up to the sky by the horrendous powers inside the crater, turning into a water dragon with incomparable strength. The water flows kept pouring into the crater, then transformed into rampageous water dragons soaring up to the sky. After the power gradually dissolved, they returned to drops of rain falling. Damn it! Can't see anything. Why are you burrowing into the ground? *T, you've just pissed on my fireworks. I want to go down to sea. If you want to die, go ahead. I assure that you will no longer exist in this world tomorrow. On the terrace of the shaking tavern, many warriors were whining, wanted to go down there to have a better look, but they were afraid of the aftershocks from the powers of the 2 of them. Thus, they could only continue staying in the tavern and were complaining nonstop. Boom, boom, boom. Inside that deep crater, which was like a well, Shuryen and Man-gu were still hanging onto each other. The tremendous strength massively rolled out from the 2 of them. The violent strength, which could easily crush down ordinary warriors, flowed out through their limbs, colliding with each other and creating the explosive sound like rolling thunders. The inside of the earth was destroyed so terribly that deep ditches appeared everywhere. Shuryen activated the petrification martial spirit, which made his body as solid as stone or steel. The negative power was like surging tides, joining with his profound chi and torrentially flowing everywhere inside his body. Every time a punch was launched, earth-shaking explosive sounds resounded from inside his arms' bones. While he was freely discharging the power, his body, which had been tempered thousands of times before, suddenly released an indescribably wonderful feeling as if his body contained the unlimited strength which wasn't unlikely to burst out. When the tremendous power of Man-gu struck on his body, a sound, which was like pieces of mental consciousness that collided with each other, arose. Shuryen felt that his entire body was in pain as if all of his cells had been smashed at once. However, during the pain, he also felt refreshed at the same time. A miraculous illusion had appeared. He had a feeling that his body was a magic weapon and Man-gu was a big hammer pounding on his body. It seemed that this was an indispensable step when forging the magic weapons. Man-gu's strength, which was enough to smash all of the insides of his body, also seemed to have some effects that helped his body go through a marvelous tempering process. Under Man-gu's torrential attacks, inside his iron body, the cells continuously divided and then combined. The blood vessels were overstretched too much that it would possibly break at any time. Even the bones inside his body also produced the shrieking sound as if they were about to have some transformations. Under the effect of the powerful punches, the fabulous essence of the ice-cold flame and the earth flame, which were hiding inside his body, were also miraculously blended into his bones and then became a part of the cells and blood vessels. Under the violent attacks of Mangu, Shiryen felt abnormally comfortable. However, Mangu didn't like it. Being in the first rank of the uncultivated barbarian sect's young generation, he had always been transmitted the most powerful strength of the uncultivated barbarian sect since he was little. Since he was born, he already had the innate god power. His vessels and blood were also different from ordinary people. The current body provided him with an incomparably mighty strength which helped him cultivate many dangerous combat techniques of the uncultivated barbarian sect to the extent that nobody could even have imagined. So far, Mangu had always assumed that he was the next generation's barbarian god. At the same realm, no one was able to fight face-to-face with him. However, while fighting with Shiryen today, he had realized that the legend of barbarian god's body, which had been spread throughout the history of the uncultivated barbarian sect, was not the only truth. In this world, it turned out that without cultivating the magics of the uncultivated barbarian sect nor help from the spiritual pellets of the uncultivated barbarian sect, there was still someone who possessed a body that was as mighty as his. The horrendous strength that he had strived to release was able to crush the beasts at the same level, although the sturdiness of these beasts far surpassed the ones of the warriors at the same level. He used to try it. He truly could smash the organs of the 5th-level beast, Green Eyes Armored Lion, with only one strike, which led to its miserable death. The body of the Green Eyes Armored Lion was very sturdy. Even the organs inside the body were covered by some layers of flesh which were as hard as the iron armors. Even if the strong profound chi of the ordinary warriors could get into its body, it was still tough to break those layers of flesh to harm the internal organs. But with only one punch, accompanied by the crazily explosive strength of the punch, he had crumbled the organs of the Green Eyes Armored Lion, even the flesh layers, which were as hard as the iron armor that just had been broken. The incomparable god power. He has assumed that nobody in this world could be stronger than his barbarian strength, or possess a body which was sturdier than his. However, today, his torrential power that was like the strong wind and the big storm hadn't been able to smash Shiryen's system after having swept all over his body. He even felt that he was fighting with a 1,000-year stone. His punch seemed to strike on a rare lava rock instead of a living body. Boom, 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 boom. An explosive sound that could even remove mountains came up from the huge deep hole. After that, water dragons undulatingly flew up to the sky one by one amid the splendid water shower, dazzling other people's eyes. Many vibrating waves suddenly spread out from the middle of the bathing area. Wherever the vibrating waves diffused, the ground instantly split open. Those taverns, which had been shaken and almost collapsed, finally violently shook as they couldn't stand the consecutive shockwaves anymore. Being surrounded with many screams, many warriors hurriedly leaped up and flew out. Before those warriors could get out completely, the remaining taverns eventually collapsed at the same time as they had to suffer too many of consecutive vibrations. Xia Xinyan, together with Yi Zhongfeng and Lin Yiqi, and other warriors hastily moved away from the bathing area, running towards the trading area in the distance. The buildings in the trading area were made of the blazing yang stones, which could only be found on the Sun Island. Moreover, each building was reinforced by a special formation. Therefore, all vibrations reaching the trading area would be instantly suppressed. The trading area was still safe. Not long after that, many warriors who were as wet as a drowned rat shifted to the trading area to continue watching the fight. 3 people, Xia Xinyan, Yi Zhongfeng, and Lin Yiqi, were also among those people. The 3 of them didn't seem to worry for Shiryen. Xia Xinyan's face was still calm. Yi Zhongfeng and Lin Yiqi even showed their excitement, discussing together nonstop on the way. The peculiar vibrations inside the earth were getting more and more violent to the extent that the elders who were secluding for cultivation on the sacred light mountain of the Sun Island were also alerted. In front of the caves on the mountain flank of the Sun Island, some figures that emitted heating aura quietly appeared. They were standing under the shades of the ancient trees in front of the caves, coldly looking down. A ray of god light zoomed over. The hierarch in power of the 3 gods sect, Tang Yuanan, silently appeared on the mountain flank. He stood underneath the shade of a luxuriant juniper tree, waving at those who were standing in front of the caves. As soon as those elders saw him, they immediately leaped up, flew over, and stood next to him. Waiting until those elders stood neatly, Tang Yuanan revealed a smile, then pointed toward the clamorous noise down there, and said, "The one who is fighting with Man Gu is Shi Yan." Some of the elders with doleful eyes but robust spirits displayed astonishment after hearing it. One of them slightly bent down and said with a low voice, "Are you sure that he is the successor of the star god?" Tang Yuanan was still somber. He said seriously, "Yes. I am sure." The elders' expressions were all shaken. When looking down there, they were even more attentive, as if they were thinking of something for the future of the three-god sect. According to the three-god sect's rules, once he successfully enters the Nirvana realm, he can also become the star god of the next generation. Tang Yuanan's face was heavy. He lowered his voice. "If 5 out of 9 of the three-god sect's elders in power agree, he will become the new star god and immediately receive the newfound noble position and status in the god sect. You need to think carefully. I believe he is very close to the Nirvana realm." The countenance of the elders slightly changed after hearing those words. Once the star god's identity is confirmed, the benefits of the three-god sect should also be altered. Therefore, you will have to concede some of your current benefits. Tang Yuanan meaningfully looked at the elders and then continued, "I know you will feel that it is difficult. Obtaining something is easier than giving it up. But I hope that you can sacrifice and make concessions for the sake of the three-god sect. Even I myself will concede a part of my benefits to support the new star god." The elders of the three-god sect kept silent without uttering a word. "Hierarch, we have heard that he is a member of the Yang family." One of the elders suddenly spoke up. Tang Yuanan secretly released a sigh. He reluctantly nodded. "That's not wrong. Yang Tian Emperor has assigned Jiao Han Yi, one of the 3 Azura kings, to pick him up. That has proved how much the Yang family respects him. While Yang Tian Emperor hasn't returned yet, if we take this chance, tightly binding him with the God sect, isn't it a good thing for the God sect? What if he had the benefits of the three-god sect, but his heart was for the Yang family? The God sect has its own rules." Tang Yuanong hesitated for a while before replying. The elders' faces slightly changed. They then quietly nodded. After that, without asking further, they shifted their eyes towards the bathing area down there. They wanted to see if that little rascal was qualified enough to make them willingly concede their current benefits or not. Opportunity should only be obtained by one's real ability. Chapter 311. You understand my ass. Chapter 311. You understand my ass. Editor. At the foot of the sacred light mountain, the seawater was ultramarine. The afterglow was of a mesmerizingly blazing red hue. Clouds were pink and the sea was blue. Many groups of clouds were floating around. The scene here was originally peaceful and relaxing. However, the 2 aggressive young men who were fighting had already destroyed this beautiful scene. At this time, in the oval-shaped bathing area, the rubble of stones was scattering everywhere in the air. The ground had been indented, forming many deep craters. After an earth-piercing explosive sound, the ground was split open, creating a bottomless crater. The seawater immediately flooded into that crater, which was like 1,000 of Zhangdeep abyss. The 2 tremendous conflicting powers had made the seawater rise as if it wanted to drown both the sky and the earth. Inside the bathing area, the wreckages of the taverns were littered everywhere. Many pots and pans were floating on the water. Some food was also bobbing up and down on the water. The natural bathing area had become a garbage dump and didn't retain any of its former elegance. Everything had been caused by the 2 people who were fighting inside that gaping crater. Boom! A sound like the rolling thunders came up from inside the crater. The entire bathing area was vibrating. Inside that crater, countless energetic seals condensed all together in the middle of the dazzling lights. 7 big energetic seals merged into one, which was like a giant hand of an angel bringing along the earth-destructive aura, dashing toward Mangu. Mangu was struck out of the crater. In the middle of the splattering shower, Mangu's face was pale, and the muscles on his sturdy body was convulsing nonstop. His horrendous strength was still there, but it seemed that Mangu wasn't able to use his strength anymore. Under the attack of the energetic seals, Mangu was then struck up to hundreds of zhang and continued getting slammed and pinned by a huge flow of water. The Mangu's buffalo-like body was now like a small boat in the torrent which was clearly about to capsize. In the middle of the full force of the barraging water, his strength seemed to be in the state of, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. The talented seed of the uncultivated barbarian sect, the young man who was ranked at number 2 in the power rankings, at this moment, seemed to lose. Many people in the trading area didn't believe in their own eyes. In the middle of the buzzing discussions, from a corner where nobody had paid attention to, a graceful shout suddenly came up, enough. Chao Zilan, who had disappeared for long, abruptly emerged. Her body was covered with a layer of splendid lights as she was walking on the surface of the water, approaching Mangu. No one knew that she had been hiding in the lake all that time. When the two men had been fighting, as she had disappeared without a trace, people had thought that she had soon left already. It was unexpected that when the fight was coming to an end, she had now reappeared all of a sudden. It seemed that she had been coldly watching the violent fight between the two men in the dark and laughing to herself. Perhaps the fact that being bluntly refused by Shuryen had irritated her so much that she, from the beginning until now, hadn't shown up to prevent the fight nor asked Mangu to stop. Many people knew that Mangu of the uncultivated barbarian sect seemed to have listened only to her. However, why she hadn't stopped him was unknown. It was unknown either she wanted to ridicule Shuryen or to let Mangu know how dangerous Shuryen was, that she had just quietly been hiding during that time. Nobody knew her real intentions. However, at this critical point of time, she finally showed up. As soon as she appeared, she slenderly leaped up like a phoenix. The brilliant lights were moving around, covering her entire body. Chao Zilan's body, which was like a rainbow, moved toward Mangu. After that, when she lifted her jade-like hand up, magnificent lights in the sky suddenly intertwined, forming a silver net which tied up Mangu just in a blink. One of her hands held the silver net while her other hand, relying on the torrent, pulled Mangu up and then landed on the ground. "Let go of me. I want to kill him." Being tied up inside the silver net, Mangu was struggling and angrily screaming. A murderous aura suddenly struck people's faces. At this time, it seemed that Mangu's strength was still as violent as before. Thus, he still wanted to risk his life in fighting Shuryen, knocking Shuryen outright in front of Chao Zilan. "You should calm down." Chao Zilan knitted her eyebrows and then threw him a jade vase. "Take the pellet inside the vase quickly. Your body is severely injured. You don't have the immortal martial spirit as he does. If you continue to fight, you will definitely die." "I don't care." Mangu screamed out loud. His face was vivid red. "I certainly can kill him. Let me go. I want to kill him." Mangu's scream was still powerful as usual. But when the people heard it, it somehow expressed his helplessness. "Stupid buffalo." Chao Zilan cursed him under her breath before using her jade-like hand to pat on the back of Mangu's head strongly. A dark blue octopus suddenly appeared on the back of his head. Its tentacles quickly held Mangu's head, and black streams of power ran out from those tentacles, absorbing into Mangu's brain. The haughtiness in Mangu's eyes gradually vanished. He felt that his eyelids became so heavy that he couldn't open his eyes anymore. When he closed his eyes, his body finally relaxed and his stiffened muscles loosened. Streams of red blood gradually gushed out from the muscles on his body. After a short while, Mangu's body was full of blood. It turned out that Mangu's body had soon torn down. However, when the muscles had stiffened, those injuries had been suppressed. Even a drop of blood couldn't have spewed out because his skin and flesh were too solid. However, at this moment, when his spirit had relaxed, and the muscles on his body were no longer tense, those injuries then surfaced. Chao Zilan's eyes flared up a beam of remorse. She secretly released a sigh. After that, she quickly sat down, taking out many vases and jars, then applied the medicinal powder on Mangu's body. In front of many people, Shuryen's blunt refusal had made an arrogant person like her too resentful. Therefore, a person who was always calm like her hadn't been able to be discerning anymore. Having seen Mangu challenge Shiryen in combat, she hadn't stopped him as she had thought that Mangu would have taught Shiryen a lesson. She obviously knew the depth of Shiryen's abilities, but as being from the Tudasi, she also clearly knew how unpredictable Mangu's innate god power was. In the Tudasi, Mangu had soon performed the great strength that ordinary people could hardly believe. She understood Mangu's power. Once Mangu went crazy, he would be able to release the strength which was enough to destroy a Nirvana realm warrior. That was why she had felt that Mangu would have had defeated Shiryen, helping her save her reputation in front of the other warriors of the Endless Sea. Regretfully, she had underestimated Shiryen. Damn it! Chao Zilan gritted her teeth while checking on Mangu's wounds and quietly observing the bathing area. Swoosh! The water arrows continuously flew up to the sky. In the shower of the water arrows, Shiryen's face was pale, his skin and flesh had been torn apart. He looked even more miserable than Mangu. However, his eyes still expressed the same coldness as before. The godlight remained in his eyes proved that he still had a lot of energy. Although his appearance looked miserable, those were just external wounds. He was definitely able to engage in another fight if needed. With just a quick look, everyone was clear that Mangu had lost. Mangu was ranked second on the power rankings, yet was defeated by an unknown little rascal. Until now, the majority of people still didn't know Shiryen's real identity. Who is he after all? Really strong. Mangu is ranked second on the power rankings, yet has been defeated. Would he perhaps be more dangerous than Zhongli Dun of the Martial Holy Palace? Impossible. Zhongli Dun has already broken through the Nirvana realm for a long time and is about to reach the second sky of the Nirvana realm. In this world, only the ancient and mystical place like the Martial Holy Palace can temper that kind of monster. That's right. The gap between their realms is too big, so he obviously couldn't defeat Zhongli Dun. What if he also breaks through the Nirvana realm? If so, it's hard to say. Right. Everyone in the trading area was boisterously discussing, secretly comparing Shiryen with the person who was the number one on the power rankings, Zhongli Dun. For them, as having just defeated Mangu, Shiryen had become the new most shining star on the power rankings. However, they still didn't know who Shiryen was. Thud. Shiryen was like a big bird stomping on the water and then constantly leaping up. In just a short moment, he was already on the ground and walked towards Chao Zilan. The wounds on Shiryen's body had stopped bleeding, and in front of numerous eyes of other people, those wounds started healing with a visible speed. Immortal martial spirit. Monster of the Yang family. My gosh, he is the monster of the Yang family. No wonder. I have told you, only the monster of the Yang family has the peculiar fighting strength like that. Everyone clamored and displayed the excitement on their faces. Some of them also started to be frightened and worried for their forces back home. Wasn't it that the Yang family had been expelled from the Endless Sea? Many people were suspicious as well as astonished. They didn't know where Shiryen came from after all. But anyway, this fight had startled everyone. The news of the Yang family's return to the Endless Sea was immediately spread throughout the entire island. What are you coming here for? Chao Zilan's charming face suddenly paled. As she knew that Shiryen was very cruel, she couldn't help but shield Mangu, who was unconscious, and then lowered her voice begging, Shiryen, you and he are not enemies nor have any prior resentments. Please be merciful. Shiryen's eyes were still frigid. His face was as cold as ice. He looked at Chao Zilan and said, I come here because of you, not Mangu. Because of me? Chao Zilan was astonished. Her beautiful eyes beamed out a look of surprise. You have known that Xinyan is here, yet still played tricks in the lake. If I am not consistent, I would have gotten trapped. Shiryen knitted his eyebrows then coldly smiled. I don't like to be fooled around with. I warn you, if this happens again, don't blame me for not having mercy. You intentionally fought with Mangu because you want people to pay attention to you through Mangu's defeat. Haven't you got what you want? Chao Zilan was not frightened. She still gently smiled and then lowered her voice. Two of us are the same kind of person. You are not better than me. To achieve your purpose, you disregard any tricks. It is an outstanding personality to obtain our goals. Yan, that woman is too honest. She isn't suitable for you. So, you're suitable for me? Yan mocked. Of course, I can help you attain your goals. Goals? Yan shook his head. Understand? My ass. After finishing, he immediately turned his head around, ignoring Chao Zilan and walked straight towards Sasanyan. His frigid look gradually disappeared. Chapter 312, Not the One Who is Content with Staying in Pawns. Chapter 312, Not the One Who is Content with Staying in Pawns. Editor. On the sacred Light Mountain's flank, Tang Yuanan and the elders of the Three Gods sect were all standing together on a branch of a small juniper tree. Their bodies swayed gently in the breeze as if they were weightless. The faces of the Three Gods sect's elders slightly expressed their astonishment. Watching Si Yan walking towards Xiaoxinyan down there, they were full of suspicions. They mumbled, although the immortal martial spirit of the Yang family is very powerful, it only has the recovering effect at the beginning, not the effect of increasing body strength. One of the elders with a scarred face was floundered for a while and said, As what I have known, the immortal martial spirit has to reach to the last phase to become intimidating. Every time it breaks through one level, the immortal martial spirit's strength enhances dozens of times. However, before that, its efficiency is to merely increase the recovery ability of flesh and the flexibility of tendons and bones. Other elders also nodded. The ancient barbarian body of Mangu is different. The luridness of Mangu is displayed through his body strength. Even if he doesn't use the profound qi, the strength of the ancient barbarian body can still be compared with the full power strike of a normal Earth Realm warrior. If Mangu releases all of his strength, he will be able to defeat a Nirvana realm. In a face-to-face combat like this, I don't know how he could lose. That elder mused for a while before continuing. These two men didn't use any secret treasures. Mangu having been defeated is truly unreasonable. Tang Yuanan's face was still unchanged. He said, There are some secrets in this little rascal's body indeed. I have noticed that the power in his body is extremely chaotic. It seems that several different strengths were coexisting within him. Hierarch, this little rascal is not the one who is content with staying in pawns. After that elder had thought for a while, he nodded, admitting Yan's ability. Everyone seemed to agree. Tang Yuanan burst out laughing. He said, he still doesn't know how to use the star martial spirit. Everyone's eyes brightened. Inside the martial spirit that the star god has transmitted, there is his spiritual mark. Once Yan knows how to activate the secret technique from me, it will. Tang Yuanan didn't say further. The Three God sect's elders were all shaken with fear. Their faces became strange. This matter, wait until we go to Moon Island to organize the sect conference. Then we will decide whether or not he can become the new star god. Tang Yuanan finally spoke up after musing for a while. Everyone nodded with confused faces. At a hidden corner of the trading area, Linda's clothes were soaking wet, her hair fell on her cheeks, her dazed eyes were looking at that sturdy figure over there. Beside her, the eyes of a female follower of the Three Gods sect also brightened up with excitement. Linda, do you actually know him? That's cool. This girl's name was Jiangli. Her small face had already turned red, and her hands tightly clenched while she looked very nervous. She urged Linda, go there to meet him. Linda's subtle body suddenly shivered. A beam of bitterness was revealed from the corner of her mouth. She slightly shook her head, no. Why? Jiangli didn't understand. She tightened her fists and resentfully said, as you know him, you have to take the chance. I can't have this chance though I want it so much. Linda, let me tell you, this guy will be an important person in the future. If you don't grab this chance to tie him up now, you won't have any other chances later. I am still so far behind him, Linda whined. Her face looked disappointed. She said, only beautiful and powerful women like Chao Zilan or Xia Xinyan deserves him. I don't deserve. It makes sense. Jiangli kept silent. She thought for a while before nodding. She gloomily said, this guy is too dangerous. Sigh, being with a person like that is not easy either. But if it were me, as long as I could be with him, I would have been willing to do anything, even to be his concubine. I am just afraid he won't lay his eyes on me." While talking, Jiangli took out a bronze mirror, then started counting the pimples on her face. After a while, she put her temper aside and whiningly said, "All right, I should stop thinking about it." Linda was bewildered, looking at the sturdy figure that was attracting thousands of eyes. As she didn't have enough courage to walk over, she could only stand at the dark corner, quietly watching Shiryan's vigorous body that seemingly had the god lights wrapping around it. In the bathing area, Chao Zilan's eyes became strange. While curling up her lips, she was silently watching Shiryan's back, seeing him revealing a smile and walking towards Xiaoxinyan. Didn't sell himself cheap just for some interests, nor accepted me for the Chao family's forces. "Shiryan, I have started to like you," Chao Zilan mumbled to herself. Then, her full lips slightly shivered, revealed a mesmerizing smile on her face. It seemed that she just had a true feeling for Shiryan as of now. Her behaviors before were merely the rationale trading. She had never been moved except for seeing Shiryan as her ally in the future. She had wanted to make use of the marriage to bind him without any romantic attachments. However, when Shiryan had coldly rejected her in front of numerous people, his heartless words were like miraculous seeds that were planted in her heart, bringing out a strange vibration. "It seems like I should treat you more honestly." Chao Zilan revealed a beautiful smile. Her eyes were full of confidence. In front of other people, her jade-like hands constantly patted Mangu's body, and then she poured out all the medicinal powder inside dozens of vases and jars on his body. Several sturdy men with leather cloths wrapping around their body suddenly appeared, standing in one line behind Mangu. "Wait until he wakes up, then give him the medicine in this jade vase." Chao Zilan stood up, sluggishly straightened her back. The dazzling lights around her body gradually vanished, exposing a blue dress that embraced the mesmerizing curves of her body. When she slothfully stretched out her shoulders, the curve exposing at her bosom agitated everyone. The big warriors of the uncultivated barbarian sect suddenly gasped with reddened faces, but they didn't dare to have any wicked thoughts. Being one of the forces in the Tudasi, they knew how powerful the Chao family was, and even knew more clearly about the status of this beautiful woman in the Chao's family. Although the uncultivated barbarian sect's power was mighty, they still had to submit if confronting the Chao family. People outside of the Tudasi knew that the Chao family was very dangerous, but they still didn't know the Chao family's real ability, which was even more terrifying than what they could ever imagine. These warriors of the Tudasi knew it very well. Even though Mangu had been injured because of her, they didn't dare to show any intentions of vengeance. "Take good care of Mangu. He just got external injuries. After using my medicines with his body, he will recover after 7 days." Chao Zilan instructed them as if the people of the uncultivated barbarian sect were her subordinates. Only after that, she moved her charming body and left. Those followers of the uncultivated barbarian sect nodded constantly, didn't seem to be angry at Chao Zilan when she treated them like the Chao family's servants. "Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that you were that dangerous." Yi Zhongfeng raised his cup of wine and took a sip. He revealed an immodest smile on his face. He then rushed towards Shiryan, who was approaching, and said, "I have been looking after your woman very carefully. She is still whole without any damages. You don't need to thank me, though." "Ha ha." Xia Xinyan blushed and embarrassedly stared at him. Yi Zhongfeng wasn't scared. He continued speaking and laughing. "No need to be ashamed. When Miss Chao stole your man, weren't you very proactive? When everything has been fine again, are you now going to reject it? Ha ha ha, you women are all deceitful." "I know it." Lin Yiqi scolded him. "Can you shut your stinky mouth for a while? It is very hard for them to see each other. When they are about to say something that is nauseously sweet and sentimental, you bastards had to have jumped in and destroyed the mood. You tell me, how can I enjoy the play?" "Enjoy the play?" Yi Zhongfeng harumphed. "Jia, you better watch this kind of things less. You are still young. I am afraid that you couldn't help but feel burning inside. Then, Master would blame me as well. I wouldn't be able to take it. Jia, you'd be better not to dream about this. I know that you have been waiting for pure love. But with your personality that makes other people vomit blood, you can only attract the beasts. Little Bai, it has been long since we haven't fought with each other. Lin Yiqi's eyes were half closed, forming a moon shape which implied many meanings. Yi Zhongfeng's face slightly changed. He raised his head looking toward the sky and then mumbled to himself, "Oh, it is getting dark. The stars are going to rise. It's time to find a place to rest." Lin Yiqi coldly looked at him. She harumphed and then shifted her attention to Shi Yan and Xia Xinyan. Her face was full of expectation. "Let's go." After approaching, Shi Yan revealed a smile and said to Xia Xinyan, "I want to see your grandfather. I have something to tell him." Xia Xinyan smiled and nodded, "Okay." After speaking, she went straight outside without paying attention to the other people that were surrounding her. Lin Yiqi's face was now flooded with disappointment. She dispiritedly said, "Not like that. Don't tell me you want to see the hot scene?" Yi Zhongfeng giggled. Before Lin Yiqi got irritated, he hurriedly said, "Yeah, you are free anyway. Let's follow them to see." I will follow you." Lin Yiqi nodded, then hastily urged, "Let's go. Quick." Of course, of course." Yi Zhongfeng forced a smile. He then hurriedly ran after Shi Yan and shouted, "Good brother, wait for me." At a corner of the trading area, Gu Linglong gritted her white teeth. Her body slightly trembled, her eyes were as if they wanted to projected flames, and her mouth kept cursing Shi Yan nonstop. "Shi Yan, you are such a bastard. You will not die decently. I curse you to be slashed into hundreds of pieces, and that your soul will scatter and perish." She both cursed and wiped away the stains on her body. Her entire body was soaking wet, exposing beautiful curves. However, with her wet clothes tightly stuck to her body, as well as being greasy, she looked a little sluttish. Before the tavern had collapsed, as she had been passionately waving her hands to support Mengu, she had jumped out of the tavern a little bit late. She had been swept along with the tavern, falling right on the redundant food floating on the water. That was why she had this appearance. Of course, she blamed all the responsibility on Shi Yan. When she had witnessed Shi Yan's strength by her own eyes, she had been so angry that her entire body had trembled. "Stop screaming. He has left already." Xu Yanqing, on the contrary, was clean. Her eyes showed the confusion, watching Shi Yan leaving. Then, she suddenly remembered something, turning her head around looking at the group of young men who had stood up for her from before. Seeing their miserable appearances, their ruffled hair, and then comparing them with Shi Yan's cold face, she felt disheartened. Although Shi Yan was a bastard, he was much stronger than those soft eggs. Xu Yanqing thought to herself. Her eyes then flared up a strange light. It was unknown what she had just figured out. Chapter 313, The Soul Bridge. Chapter 313, The Soul Bridge. Editor. On a deserted island near the immortal island of the Kiara Sea, in front of the heaven gate that was immersed in the dazzling light, numerous demon dwellers like a colony of ants were going back and forth. The heaven gate, which was originally big enough for only one person to get through, was gradually widening more and more. There were dozens of demon beasts of the six-horned demon dragon demon area in the sky. They were more than 50 meters long, carrying a bunch of corpses. They came here from everywhere, then dropped those corpses on the ground. On this island, besides the demon dwellers with peculiar shapes, many human corpses piled up on the ground. The corpses covered the entire island, stacking as high as a small mountain. The ground became red as dark red blood flooded all over the island. In the middle of the demon dwellers' cries and shouts, countless corpses on the island were flung into the heaven gate. In just a few minutes, the number of human corpses that had been hurled into the heaven gate had gone up to hundreds. The scene of people whining was happening throughout the Kiara Sea. The demon dwellers kept slaughtering nonstop throughout the thousands of islands in this area. The islands which had been protected by the Yang family, Xia family, and the evil Wonderland had turned to be dead islands. There was no one left on these islands. The demon beasts of the demon area had always been patrolling the islands in the Kiara Sea. All of them had huge bodies and were ridden by the demon dwellers. They went to every possible place to collect the human corpses. Every time the demon beasts' backs were strapped full of corpses, they would fly back to the island that connected with the heaven gate and then threw those corpses upon the piles of corpses that were now as high as a mountain on the island. Many demon dwellers were screaming and throwing human corpses into the heaven gate tirelessly. It was unknown for how long this scene had been occurring. It looked like they would never stop unless they had transported all of the corpses. The fourth demon area. The gloomy sky didn't have the moon nor the stars nor the sun, except for the savage and dreary seen all the way to the horizon. Pitch-black mountain chains dominated, covering the entire sky and earth. In a vast dark forest, dense demonic miasma hovered above the intimidating giant trees that couldn't be seen in the Grace mainland. Demonic beasts, which had massive bodies of dozens of meters, were furiously fighting against each other. Bloody battles happened here and there. Above the immense dark forest, countless corpses were hovering about in the sky. Those corpses were connected, forming a lump of meat that extended to the skyline. All of the corpses were humankind, to be exact, the humankind from the Kiara Sea of the Endless Sea. Numerous corpses piled up, interconnecting to form a big bridge. One side of the bridge connected with the splendid heaven gate. Every time the corpses appeared, hundreds of sky realm demon dwellers in the heaven gate poured the souls of the humankind out of the vases and jars in their hands. As those souls from the Kiara Sea had been tempered by a secret technique, they were full of evil auras. As soon as they got out of the vases, they were roughly refined one more time before turning into a black liquid. This liquid ran onto the corpses, which made the gap between these corpses extremely solid. It seemed that the demon dwellers of this demon area were building a bridge. This construction was exceptionally huge. It was unknown for how long it had been carried on. Millions of human corpses were used to build the foundation of this bridge. The black liquid, which was created by millions of human souls, was used to make the concrete. It was floating in the sky of the demon area, leading to an extremely remote place in the demon area. Black lights constantly sparked on the big bridge. The soul bridge hanged in the demon area sky. One end connected to the heaven gate and the other end led to a mystical place of the demon area. Every time more corpses and souls were thrown into the heaven gate, the soul bridge would slowly extend a little bit. The distance between one end of the bridge and the mystical place of the demon area were getting shorter. This spectacular construction looked like it was going to be completed soon. Sevenfold Underworld. The sky was dark green, and the air was overwhelmed with icy and erosive aura. Further ahead, the ground was full of deep holes. Those deep holes were like big, wide-opened bloody mouths that were waiting for human flesh. Inside the holes, the colorful liquid was babbling, in the middle of which, air bubbles blistered constantly. The air bubbles blistered then exploded. The auras with different colors spread out from inside the holes and then blended with the dark aura of this world, making the dark aura even denser. If looking down from the sky, there were no even and flat areas in this land. The ground was rugged and rough. Those deep holes, where the air bubbles constantly blistered, were like pimples. Whenever they broke, some frightening auras flew out. Among those holes, there was a huge cave which occupied 1/10 of the territory of this continent. Inside this huge cave, the black liquid was gurgling. This cave had many paths which connected with other numerous caves that made the liquid from all of the caves in the entire continent stream to one place, creating the peculiar deep sea. The deep sea was boundless. It was even much bigger than the 5 big seas of the Endless Sea combined. In the deep sea, the sea water was black, which seemed to be boiling up all the time. Bubbles, big and small, continually blistered then broke out, spreading out the colorful auras. The colorful auras condensed into a dense, undispersed miasmatic curtain, covering the entire deep sea sky. Above the deep sea, countless dark dwellers' corpses were hovering around. Many dark dwellers were standing on those corpses. Inside a whirlpool amid the deep sea, the spin of the whirlpool was constantly swallowing up the dark dwellers' corpses which were hovering around above the deep sea. With every passing second, dozens of corpses were swept into that whirlpool. In the middle of the whirlpool, many dark dwellers in the air were pouring out the souls of the dark dwellers which were contained in the vases in their hands. After that, these souls also turned into the black liquid watering on the corpses. Besides, in the center of the whirlpool, a dull light column, which was like a big mouth of the demon beasts, was slowly devouring the corpses. The other side of that big mouth was a gloomy place. In the middle of the air, the soul bridge, which was made of the dark dwellers' corpses, was gradually extending toward a persistent direction. In this space, no aura of strength existed. There was no sky, no earth, and no living creatures, except only for the soul bridge. In this murky space, the soul bridge seemed to be spurred by some unknown strength. Every time one corpse was added, the soul bridge again reached out a little bit more. The direction that this soul bridge was aiming for was the same with the place that the soul bridge of the demon area was leading to. Once these two soul bridges adjoined, the sevenfold underworld and the fourth demon area will be interconnected after tens of millions of years. In order to link these gloomy spaces, the Dark King of the sevenfold underworld and the Demon King of the demon area had planned it for over hundreds of years. The point of time when these two worlds connected was coming closer. In the fourth demon area, on the peak of a mountain which had been created by the stack of white bones, 49 demon dragons were flying around in the sky. The demon dragons opened their big mouths, exposing the sparkling fangs that could make other people fearfully tremble, and then disgorged black smokes. The dragon aura of the demon dragons was overwhelming the entire Bone Mountain's peak. On the peak, there were 108 white bone pillars. The pillars were splendid like jades. The images of the demon gods of the ancient time were engraved on the surface of the pillars. 108 white bone pillars formed a miraculous formation. Their positions were arranged based on the changes of the stars. The dragon auras, which were disgorged by the 49 demon dragons, were all absorbed by those white bone pillars. When those bone pillars had absorbed the dragon aura to a specific degree, the demon gods of the ancient time, which were engraved on the surface of the pillars, would revive and then rush to the altar in the middle of the formation. The rhombus-shaped altar was made of white bones. Layers of boundaries blockaded the surroundings of the altar. Between the layers of boundaries outside the altar, many kinds of earth-destructive auras were conflicting with each other non-stop, shooting out waves of energy that were so violent that all the warriors of the demon area were able to feel them. A skinny old man with white hair on his temples and a serious face was standing in the middle of the altar. He was totally naked, suffering different kinds of power striking his body. Besides, he was also enduring the attacks of the demon gods of the ancient time which could hit him at any time. Every time one demon god of the ancient time broke through the boundaries and went inside, a holy armament suddenly appeared on his naked body that radiated thousand-jong holy lights. The holy armament contained tremendous god power, emitting the light which was similar to the converged light of the sunlight and the moonlight. Moreover, the holy armament kept discharging impetuous aura nonstop. The demon gods of the ancient time released a variety of magics, either swinging their arms and launching thousands of lightning strikes, or the violent punch that was as heavy as a mountain, or dividing into hundreds of demon gods. However, these attacks on that elderly man were all crushed and bounced right off by the holy armament's energy waves. While battling, sometimes his bare body was full of wounds. Other times, his arms had been both cut off. However, they were all regenerated and regained their normal state just in a short time. His body was almost immortal, eternally indestructible. At the same time, he also opened his mouth, spurted out a drop of blood. That blood drop was as red as ruby and able to tear apart the boundaries and smash the white bone pillars. Nevertheless, every time one white bone pillar had been broken, the thousand-jong bone mountain instantly vibrated, and then a brand new white bone pillar rose up again. The number of the 108 white bone pillars had remained unchanged so that the formations could operate normally. Outside of the formation, 3 white bones dharma bodies were as big as mountains, emitting demon aura that was as vast as the sea. On the sparkling white bone body, thousands of strange badges, which looked like stars in the sky blinking nonstop, were slowly changing their positions. One of the 3 white bones dharma bodies was looking toward the altar. Two demon flames were dancing in its sockets. Its eyes were staring at the person on the altar. Yang Tian Emperor, the strength of your body has been consumed 80%. The reason you have been able to have persistently endured until now is due to your peculiar immortal martial spirit and the Yang family's eternal holy armament that has been transmitted throughout many years. Although you have just reached the first sky of the spirit realm, you can rely on burning the immortal blood to strain that long. Yang Tian Emperor, you deserve to be the once-in-a-thousand-year exceptional genius of the Yang family. The white bones Dharma body in the middle suddenly spoke up. But your immortal blood is limited. The eternal holy armament requires the immortal blood to continue releasing the god power. When you have used up all the immortal blood, how much longer can you sustain this heavenly demon wind god formation? The person on the altar still closed his eyes tightly. When the demon gods of the ancient time disappeared, he regained his naked body. I, Bo Su, have been engaging in wars for my whole life. I have met so many warriors, but I have to admit that you are the opponent that I respect. The White Bones Dharma body hesitated for a while before giving the advice. If you agree to let the Yang family belong to the demon area, I will immediately remove the heavenly demon wind god formation and assure the Yang family's glory throughout 10 consecutive generations. No one on earth that can make me, Yang Tian Emperor, submissive. Chapter 314. 3 Antiquities. Chapter 314. 3 Antiquities. Editor. White Bones Dharma body of Bo Sun suddenly mused. Yang Tian Emperor's eyes remained closed tightly. His naked body was radiating peculiar lights. Just after having rested for a short time, he seemed to have restored some parts of his strength. Other people could feel that the strength of his body was surging up. Yang Tian Emperor, you are just a thief. Bo Sin suddenly harumphed and spoke up after being silent for a long while. If you, Chao Qiu Dao of the Chao family, and the palace headmaster Yang Yi Tian of the martial holy palace haven't shared the immortal blood and the soul remnant of the God King's body, what qualification that you have to confront me when you have just reached the first sky of the spirit realm? Yang Tian Emperor kept silent. 100 years ago, you, Chao Qiu Dao, and Yang Yi Tian had just entered the Nirvana realm, but you had a big luck. The three of you got lost in the turbulent space and found a God King's grave inside the rift of space. You and Chao Qiu Dao swallowed more than half of the God King's blood, and Yang Yi Tian obtained the remnant of the God King's soul. That was why you guys could build up the 3 big forces in the Endless Sea, creating the legend of the 3 of you. Without the God King's corpse, how could the 3 of you rebel that fast, be strong enough to fight with me within 100 years only? Frankly speaking, the 3 of you are all the Tomb Raiders. Yang Tian Emperor knitted his eyebrows but didn't utter a word. The God King's blood had helped you and Cap Qiu Dao be strong enough to defeat the 3rd sky of the Spirit Realm warriors, although you guys were just at the 1st sky of the Spirit Realm. After all, the God King's blood has made your profound chi have some anomalies and brought you a little god power. Yang Yi Tian, thanks to obtaining the soul remnant of the God King, he could enter the 2nd sky of the spirit realm. After 100 years of studying the soul remnant, he has captured a little of the god technique. That is how the martial holy palace has become the #1 forces in the Endless Sea. Bo Sun revealed a faint smile. Regretfully, although you guys had swallowed the body of the God King, you didn't attain the inheritance of the God King. You let the inheritance run away and hide inside the rift of space, drifting to the unknown place until now. If one of you had obtained the inheritance of the God King 100 years ago, the situation of the Endless Sea would have changed differently. If so, the 4th demon area and the 7-fold underworld should have soon become your hunting area. Eventually, Yang Tian Emperor opened his eyes in which there seemed to have thousands of twinkling stars moving. Although I am in captivity, Chao Qiu Dao and Yang Yi Tian are still out there in the Endless Sea. If both of them unite, you and Qi Yan cannot get any benefits. Ha ha. Bo Sun suddenly burst into laughing like crazy. His laughter echoed here and there. This is the tragedy of the humankind. If it wasn't because you, Chao Qiu Dao, and Yang Yi Tian haven't got along well, always struggled in the endless sea for the blood, and the sole remnant of the God King that made the spiritual powers have been dispersed. You guys wouldn't have stopped at this current cultivation realm. That year, you, Chao Chiu Dao, and Yang Yitian were close friends, luckily entered the turbulent space region together. However, because of the God King's corpse, you guys turned to be enemies. The humankind's greed is even much bigger than the demon tribes. As you guys haven't got along well with each other, you all have got injured after several battles. That's why your cultivation has encountered some difficulties. Otherwise, your current strength should have torn apart the heavenly demon wind god formation. Yang Tian Emperor silently released a sigh without saying anything. What a pity! In the empty sockets of Bo Sun, the demon flames were still dancing nonstop. Although knowing that you have been captured in the heavenly demon wind god formation, Yang Yitian and Chao Chiu Dao still pretend to know nothing about this. Presently, the army of the demon tribes has entered the Kiara Sea, slaughtering millions of people of the Kiara Sea. The Soul Bridge is also going to be completed soon, but Chao Chiu Dao and Yang Yitian haven't had any actions. Until the sevenfold underworld and the demon area are connected with the strength of billions of people, we surely invade the endless sea, eradicate Yang Yitian and Chao Chiu Dao, not to let them continue expanding. Perhaps they have started taking actions. It is just you don't know about it. Yang Tian Emperor coldly said. It's too late now. Bo Sun burst into laughter that could violently shake the sky. Avi Dark King has convinced the other two Dark Kings of the Sevenfold Underworld to use 3 millions of the Dark Dwellers of the Sevenfold Underworld as the material to build the Soul Bridge. Not long after this, the Soul Bridge of the Underworld can connect with the demon area. That will be the end of the Endless Sea. Yang Tian Emperor's face changed finally. Until now, he realized the danger of the current situation. However, he was resentful that he was being imprisoned in the heavenly demon wind god formation and impossible to escape from it to return to the Endless Sea. Yang Tian Emperor, I still have another suggestion. You should consider it carefully. Bo Sun hesitated for a while before speaking. If you agree to help me, cooperate with me to kill Yang Yitian and Chao Chiu Dao, I promise I will give you the God King's remnant and the blood inside the bodies of Chao Chiu Dao and Yang Yitian. Once you collect enough the God King's blood, you will be able to enter the realm that ordinary people can't even imagine. Yang Tian Emperor tightly knitted his eyebrows, didn't reply. Of course, after that, you have to help me with one thing, which is using the God King's strength to break the walls between the first, the second, and the third demon area. Once the 3 demon areas are opened, not only the Endless Sea, but even the Grace mainland will fall into the misery. Yang Tian Emperor both coldly smiled and shook his head at the same time. I don't want to become the eternal sinner nor the stepping stone for your demon tribes. You should find someone else. Demon tribes? Bo Sun gritted his teeth and smiled. The 3 antiquities consists of the Grand Antiquity, the High Antiquity, and the Remote Antiquity. During the Remote Antiquity, the Yang family was really the human tribe. But during the High Antiquity, the Yang family was actually one of the pagan tribes. If it wasn't because the Yang family had only passed on the blood, not the typical features of the pagan tribe after several times of hybridization, I am afraid that you, Yang Tian Emperor, would have been much different from the human more than I am. Yang Tian Emperor's face changed in fear. His lips shivered for a while but didn't explain anything. Therefore, don't mention pagan tribes to me. After all, we both are pagan tribes. No need to be too stubborn. Bo Sun frigidly smiled. How could you know about this? Yang Tian Emperor kept silent for a long while, then released a long sigh and asked. 100 years ago, in the Endless Sea, there appeared the turbulent space region. Before that, it had also appeared once in the 4th demon area. Bo Sun's voice became heavy. And me, I was still a normal hunter of the Dragon Horn clan by that time. I also unintentionally entered the turbulent space region and found something in the rift of space. Otherwise, I wouldn't have attained the Demon King position now. The turbulent space region used to appear in the demon area as well? Yang Tian Emperor was astonished. If not, how could I know the story about you, Chao Chiu Dao, and Yang Yitian as clearly as the back of my hand? Bo Sun coldly laughed. The things that I have gained helps me know what have happened with the three of you, some secrets in the Grand Antiquity, the High Antiquity, the Remote Antiquity, and also know that Yang family was one of the pagan tribe in the High Antiquity. You have talked that much just because you want me to unite with the demon tribes. But you certainly understand me as well. Yang Tian Emperor cold-heartedly said. Bo's son suddenly mused. After a while, he released a sigh, nodded the big skull of the white bones Dharma body, then said, I have soon known that you would not agree. However, as you are the opponent that I respect, I think that I should let you know something before you are tortured to death. Besides, people who could return alive after entering the turbulent space region were just a few. There are several things that I have held on for my whole life, so I want to find someone that I can share with. Yang Tian Emperor released a sigh. I tell you the last time. I know where the Yang family is hiding in the fourth demon area. After the soul bridges are connected, if you still don't think it through, the Yang family will perish. The hereditary possession that you have built up during your entire life will go up in smoke in a blink. As soon as Bo soon finished talking, the demon flames inside his sockets became gloomier. It seemed that he had withdrawn the host soul of the white bones Dharma body. At the same time, the demon gods on 108 white bone pillars started to operate again, massively flying out, dashing toward Yang Tian Emperor. In the Sky Sea. On the Sky Demon Mountain Range, a fierce beast was tearing apart the body of the 6th-level Stormy Rock. Half of the 5-meter-long body of the Stormy Rock had been devoured. Its brain and the demon crystal had been swallowed up. This ferocious beast was enjoying tearing its prey down. The beast's brutal eyes flickered the cold lights that could break people's souls. Its entire body sparked black lights. Its aura was very terrifying. Beside it was a pile of the giant beast bones. The skin and flesh had been eaten up, leaving the white bones only. Not long after that, the Stormy Rock had also been devoured completely. The beast's bones suddenly crackled. Many circles of black lights started to spread out from its body at the same time. Wherever the black lights diffused, the ancient trees there, which were dozens of meters tall, were crushed down. The beasts who were hiding from afar also realized those energy waves, and thus hurriedly fled away without leaving any traces after just a short time. The beast's bones constantly produced explosive sounds. The 10-meter-long body was immersed in the black lights and began to shrink. Inside the cocoon of lights, the beast kept changing nonstop. After 3 days, it had turned to be a monster with a human shape. Its entire body was covered with thorns. The beast turned its head toward the moon, howling. Its body was covered with the demon aura and the dark aura. The brutal aura rose up overwhelmingly to the entire sky. Gui Liao. This is my name, it mumbled with a low tone. Its voice was as sharp as a knife scratching the glass, which made others' flesh creep. He has asked me to wait for him, but I have been waiting for so long. I can't wait anymore. After talking and answering to itself for a while, its green eyes seemed to flare up Shurian's image. Raising its head looking toward the sky, it seemed to be arranging its thoughts. No one knew what it was thinking about at this moment. Very long after that, a pair of fleshly wings suddenly grew up from its backbone. It then flew up straight to the sky, getting out of the Sky Demon Mountain Range just in a blink. Grr. On the Sky Demon Mountain Range, about 10 big ferocious beasts lifted their faces up to the sky howling, looking at its figure. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.